July 4th has become synonymous with a kind of pure Americana, waving flags and family barbecues. But for our series, America in Pursuit, NPR's Matt Ozug explored a more mischievous side of America's birthday.
The 4th of July parade in the small town of Brooklyn, Maine is postcard-level adorable.
As always, floats, decorated bicycles, and antique cars.
Lorna Grant runs the town's historical, or keeping, society. She says Brooklyn's ritual on the night before the 4th was much more interesting.
People have traveled all around Hancock County night before the 4th to come down and see what happens at Brooklyn.
I first visited Brooklyn 25 years ago, pulling in late on July 3rd as a crowd of people stood around a pile of the town's garbage. Couches, road signs.
We used to go and find an old outhouse. Sometimes that was a smelly deal, but we would drag that outhouse up to the corner.
Decorating the corner was the euphemism for this tradition.
And then they would put stuff around it, old barrels or an old car or an old boat.
There was a joyful prankster element to the night.
I remember one time there was 4 barrels on the corner, and they picked up this small car like a Volkswagen, set it on top of those barrels, because the driver in the car was drunk and had no idea where he was. But when he woke up, he had to jump out.
It turns out July 3rd shenanigans were not unique to Brooklyn. For more than a century, New England towns celebrated the night with an explosive fervor. In the early 1900s,
the really raucous celebrations were on what was known as the night before the 4th, when boys and men who behaved like boys would use any form of pyrotechnic that came to hand.
That's the Atlantic's Yoni Applebaum, author of the magazine piece The Night Before the 4th.
I'm talking about toy pistols and improvised cannons and firecrackers and gunpowder just set off to explode.
Newspapers across the country documented this patriotic mayhem.
We're going to look at some newspaper microfilm.
Gary Johnson is a reference librarian at the Library of Congress.
This is July 3rd, 1910. And we've got an image of a gentleman who's on a stretcher.
Johnson reads from the 1910 Richmond Times-Dispatch.
Then when the smoke of carnage cleared away, 5 were found dead, 2 shot down, 3 giving up their lives as human torches. Yikes.
Many of the deaths were not from the explosions, but from something called patriotic tetanus. Here's Applebaum again.
This is before we have a tetanus vaccine. What happens is that the toy pistols or the cannon are often faulty. There's no consumer product safety yet. They explode. They may take a couple fingers with them, but they embed little bits of metal in the flesh of the people who are using them, and that leads to tetanus infections, which is a terrible way to die.
All the death and destruction led to something called the National Movement for a Safe and Sane 4th of July, which advocated for other forms of entertainment.
Moving pictures, plays, parades, and sports. The committee proposes also mammoth bonfires.
Mammoth bonfires. The Safe and Sane movement became a champion of the bonfire.
Yeah, this is an irony, because if you look at a photo of a giant bonfire, the last thing that you're going to think is, wow, gosh, that's sure safe and sane. In order to convince boys not to set off toy pistols or firecrackers, what you've got to do is give them something that's even better.
And what's better than a toy pistol? A giant bonfire, often made of wooden casks or barrels.
And so on the night before the 4th, people start organizing truly spectacular bonfires around which thousands, tens of thousands of people can gather. And that magnetic draw of the bonfire pulls people away from these private celebrations and into a grand civic occasion.
Over time, as municipal firework displays became more affordable, the July 3rd bonfire faded away. And in Brooklyn, Maine, nobody drags outhouses to the center of town anymore. But Applebaum says he misses the idea of more raucous local rituals on the night before the 4th.
We are a country full of people who disagree with each other about all kinds of things. But we've typically been able to come together around the celebration of a set of simple ideas. We believe in freedom and in justice and in opportunity. Those common values bind us as a nation. And although they may not seem to have a lot to do with a giant pyramid built out of casks, I think that there was something really democratizing about the shared spaces those bonfires created. And I think that Americans are hungering for that today. They would like some simple, uncomplicated, apolitical ways to draw together and to celebrate the values that they share in common.
In Brooklyn, Maine, I'm Matt Ozark.
So I was standing in my house, and it was so quiet, and my brain computer was beginning to work at another level. And I said, what's going on? What's happening? And it occurred to me it was Sunday, and the ball games were going on. So I said, these ball games have more significance than we realize.
Every 4 years, the FIFA World Cup asks a familiar question. Who truly owns the beautiful game? For decades, the football establishment gave a predictable answer, often looking at Africa with a patronizing pat on the back. They said, African teams have the talent, but do they have the discipline? Do they have the depth? Well, at the 2026 World Cup, Africa didn't just answer those questions. The continent completely tore up the script. Look at these scenes. This isn't just joy. It is a declaration. For the first time in history, FIFA expanded the tournament to 48 teams, giving Africa 10 slots. Critics grumbled. They warned it would dilute the quality of the competition. Former Italian football manager Gennaro Gattuso has even been on record saying Africa deserves fewer World Cup slots. It makes Europe's life harder. Well, he got the second part right. Africa is making everyone's life harder, but not by lowering the quality, by completely redefining it. Look at these numbers. Out of the 10 African nations that arrived, 9 marched directly into the round of 32 knockout stage. Only Tunisia lost. That is a 90% success rate, the absolute highest of any region in the world, beating out footballing powerhouses like South America and Europe. Now, the knockout phase is a ruthless win-or-go-home environment. Just this weekend, South Africa fought valiantly, but ultimately fell to 1-0 in a heartbreaking battle against co-hosts Canada.
Well, we are sad because obviously they lost, but we are incredibly proud of them because they reached like round of 32 for the first time ever. And that's a good milestone. That's good.
But even with Bafana bowing out, Africa still has 8 incredible teams left in the knockout bracket. From Morocco and Senegal to Algeria, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Egypt, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the tournament's true dark horse, Cape Verde. Now, this collective depth means one thing. Anything is possible. Africa's rise at the world stage isn't just luck. It is a deliberate strategy. African football boss Patrice Motsepe made it clear that this success was earned from the ground up.
Hard work and investments in youth football, coaching, professional leagues, and infrastructure in each of the 54 CAF member associations is bearing fruit. The governance, transparency, financial and auditing best practices that have been introduced attracted new sponsors and partners and helped develop and grow African football.
Now, what does this mean for the future of African football? It means the old hierarchy is dead. For years, African football fought uphill against systemic doubt. But this tournament is the ultimate turning point. It means more investment, more respect, and a generation of young kids across the continent who no longer just dream of playing in a World Cup. They now dream of winning it. Africa has arrived as a global football superpower. As the knockout rounds heat up, the world better get used to the drums, the colour, and the fierce competitiveness. Because African football isn't just visiting the big stage anymore. They are here to conquer it.
Get a load of this, all right? If you get stopped by a cop in Amsterdam, it's illegal for them to search you. I mean, that's a right that cops in Amsterdam don't have.
Oh, man, I'm going. That's all it is to it. I'm fucking going.
No, baby, you think you're the most.
Now, the Men's World Cup has entered the knockout phase, so the penalty shootout is once again a thing. Deciding a football match in this way is dramatic, but it does put huge pressure on the penalty taker. It takes enormous courage to step up for your country in front of tens of thousands of people in a stadium and millions of TV viewers. A few years ago, 3 England players faced online racist abuse after missing penalties. And this week, the same thing has happened to several Dutch players after the Netherlands were eliminated from the World Cup. The Dutch sports journalist, Refke op-Hetveld, told us about the racist abuse the Dutch players have faced.
There are 3 Dutch players that have missed a quite dramatic penalty shootout that got the Dutch eliminated against Morocco a couple of days ago. The 3 players that missed are Justin Kluivert and Crescencio Somerville, 2 Premier League players, and Quinten Timber. Yeah, they have unfortunately received a lot of racial abuse on their social media, including pictures of monkeys. Kluivert and Somerville have both turned off the ability to react on their Instagram after that, so it's hard to tell how many people responded to them exactly. But Timber's Instagram account is still open, and we can see dozens of people who have written racist comments. Thankfully, also a lot of people telling those people off, but it's still horrible, obviously.
So this is becoming a trend now, I guess, because there's such attention on the individual player if they miss a penalty, which the sort of presumption is that players will score. Fans are angry, they're looking for someone to blame, they're looking for some reason, and seem to alight on this whole business of race. What's the Dutch Football Association saying?
So they've responded last night from the United States, where they still are, and they are horrified. They say they are drawing a line. They've also said that they will report at a website where you can report online discrimination. So this is kind of like a contact point that will then look into the allegations and see if said comments are still online and if the comments are a particular criminal offense. We've also already heard that before the FA reported this, there have already been dozens of people reporting this specific racial abuse after the game.
Okay, and you probably know there's been a prosecution in the UK for online abuse of a black player. This is from the England women's team. Have there been any prosecutions of that sort in the Netherlands?
Not exactly, no. So there has been a campaign actually from the start of the World Cup here on national television starring Ruud Gullit, trying to create awareness on online abuse and trying to make sure that fans actually have a positive attitude towards the players. The online platform that I mentioned just now, where the FA will report this case, has been able to get, in previous cases, comments removed off of social media platforms. But as far as prosecutions, I couldn't really find much. I do know that last month a TV presenter in the Netherlands of a far-right network has been convicted of community service for racist abuse on social media platform X a few years ago. But as for an actual prison sentence, like happened with the abuser of Jess Carter that you just talked about, I don't think that has happened yet in the Netherlands, no.
Okay, and just finally, Refke, stepping away from what's obviously a relatively small number of people using this as an excuse for racism, what's the more general mood in the country about the fact that the team are out?
Not very good, as you can imagine. Yeah, getting to the last 32 is not at all what the Netherlands were hoping for, both the team and the country. Everyone is really disappointed, not just with the fact that they lost against Morocco, but also with how they play. There's a lot of criticism on Ronald Koeman, the head coach, who actually stepped down this morning or last night. Yeah, he's not a very adventurous coach. He played a very defensive kind of play all of a sudden in the round of 32. So the mood is not great when it comes to football these days.
And that's the Dutch sports journalist Refke op-Hetveld.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Now, anti-Muslim rhetoric in Texas is spilling beyond politics and into daily life after a bitter Republican primary runoff where Islamophobia became a major issue. Many Muslims in the state say they're now facing more hostility in schools, public places, and even political events. Muslim families across Texas saying negative comments about their faith are becoming increasingly common. Many believe the language used by some politicians is encouraging prejudice in everyday life.
It definitely trickles down. To have a kid who has these points ready and memorized like this is just very concerning as a parent.
Several Muslims said they now feel less comfortable going out alone after facing threats and online harassment. In fact, tensions were also visible at the Texas Republican Party convention in June. Muslim attendees, including party delegates, said they were called terrorists and told to convert to Christianity or leave the country.
We care about the issues that every single American cares about. We are family people. We are fathers. We are husbands. We are employees. We are employers. This is not the America I believe in, but I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere.
In fact, some Republican lawmakers have also pushed tougher policies on immigration from Muslim-majority countries. Congressman Brandon Gill, who represents the Texas 26th District, has called for restrictions on immigration from countries such as Somalia. In a message to constituents, he warned about the growth of such communities.
This is something that, if we don't stop now, it's going to be my daughter and daughters across the country who are going to public schools wearing burqas.
The Texas GOP has also made the slogan, "Don't Sharia Our Texas," one of its legislative priorities. However, experts say there is no evidence of any effort to impose Sharia law in Texas, but they explain that Sharia is not only about law, it's also a moral and religious guide for Muslims. Concerns have also emerged in education. At the Texas State Board of Education hearing, speakers objected to lessons about Islamic civilizations and Muslim history. One candidate said such views were leading to fear in the Muslim community.
These are the things that inspire fear and anxiety for Muslims running for positions of power. It causes people to shrink themselves in a sense in their everyday lives. It's a psychological suppression because you are shrinking yourself to just be sure that you are not attacked.
In response to growing divisions, State Representative Dr. Suleiman Lalani founded an interfaith caucus to encourage dialogue between different religious communities. At a recent Houston event, imams, rabbis, reverends and lawmakers gathered to discuss the politicization of faith. Because for many Texas Muslims, the hope is simple: more understanding, more respect, and a future where no community, whatever its faith, feels targeted for its beliefs.
The Department of Justice is attempting to sabotage a major victory for reparative justice in Evanston, Illinois, that compensates victims of historic housing discrimination. In 2021, the Evanston City Council agreed to pay Black residents and their descendants reparations up to $25,000 for property down payments, mortgages, and other related fees, making it the first U.S. city to adopt such a measure. For decades, Black residents of Evanston were subjected to redlining and other forms of housing discrimination, which prevented them from obtaining bank loans to purchase property. The reparations program is being funded through donations and revenue from a local tax on recreational marijuana sales. But last month, the Trump administration joined a lawsuit filed by the conservative advocacy group Judicial Watch, attempting to halt the program, claiming its race-based criteria are unconstitutional. Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon of the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division said in a statement, quote, "There are sound ways for a city to remedy past discrimination or direct resources to its most vulnerable citizens and neighborhoods. Simply handing out money based on race, however, is not the answer. It's race discrimination, pure and simple, and it's illegal," he said. Defenders of Evanston's reparations program are fighting back. And ahead of the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States, racial justice advocates are looking at Evanston as an opportunity to redress historical grievances. For more, we go to Bethesda, Maryland, where we're joined by Justin Hansford, Howard University law professor, scholar, activist, founding director of the Ogletree Reparative Bar Association. He's been on the front lines of the legal battle for reparations as the author of Jailing a Rainbow, The Unjust Trial and Conviction of Marcus Garvey. Professor Hansford, welcome back to Democracy Now! Put what's happening in Evanston in the context of this 250th anniversary of the United States.
Sure. Happy to be here, Amy. Well, what's happening in Evanston right now is a trend sweeping the country. We have over 20 cities, 5 states, California, New York, Illinois, Maryland, Washington, also Massachusetts is on the rise. Cities and states around the country starting to explore the concept of reparative justice And that includes looking at the sweep of history in their city, in their town, in their state, and trying to find a way to make things right and pursue racial justice. Here in Evanston, we saw one of the more groundbreaking examples of that. We had a city that did the research and did an investigation, found itself guilty of engaging in redlining, zoning, deed restrictions that confined black residents from 1919 to 1969 in just one part of the town, ultimately resulting in them being dispossessed from opportunities to gain equity and build wealth throughout half of the 20th century. And so the city decided to create a program to provide redress for those people to the tune of $25,000 for direct descendants. And now the Department of Justice is seeking to intervene in a lawsuit that wants to stop people from making things right in that city.
And how do you respond to Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon of the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division? She said there are sound ways for a city to remedy past discrimination. This isn't one of them, essentially.
Right. Well, it's a misreading of the record. She implies that people are just giving out reparations on the grounds of race, but we saw here that there was a report done, an impact study that actually we at the Howard University Thurgood Marshall Center helped to produce, that showed specifically in detail that this was a intentional campaign that the city was involved in, and the city admitted to those facts, and the city itself is tying very specifically a remedy to the harms that it found in that report. And if you look at, Students for Fair Admissions against Harvard, the 2023 Supreme Court case, even though that case sought to end diversity programs, it very explicitly said that you can seek to remedy past harms if you detail the specific harms in a report that allows you to narrowly tailor the remedy to those harms. So what we're seeing here is another situation where the 14th Amendment and the Fair Housing Act, which is what the government is using to try to say that this program is illegal and unconstitutional, these things that were part of the effort to reconstruct our country after the Civil War, some of the greatest racial justice tools in our 250-year history in the United States, are being used as a sword against us. What was designed to shield people from racial injustice is now being used as a weapon. So it's a terrible way to bring in the 250th anniversary.
Robin Ruth Simmons, who spearheaded Evanston's reparations program and now chairs the Evanston Reparations Committee, criticized the Trump administration efforts, saying, quote, "This lawsuit is designed to intimidate and discourage other communities that are beginning their process of reparations inspired by what Evanston has done." Simmons added Trump's lawsuit is, quote, "an attack on the revived hope that black communities have felt having a path through a hyper-local process to reparations," unquote. In 2021, Democracy Now! Spoke to Robin Ruth Simmons, who was then an Evanston City Council member. She explained what Evanston achieved for black residents impacted by historic housing discrimination.
What we passed on this last Monday was the first disbursement or the first remedy, which is going to be in the form of a housing remedy, $25,000 direct benefits to eligible black residents for home equity, home wealth, acquisition or purchase, any type of improvement, but something that will build wealth through home equity. And I have to say that in 2002, under the leadership of Judge Lionel Jean-Baptiste, who was the second ward alderman at the time, our city passed a resolution in support of H.R. 40. So we've been working towards this for some time in Evanston.
So that's Robin Ruth Simmons. And Professor Hansford, if you can also put this in the context of President Trump at this point refusing to sign off on a bipartisan housing bill, since housing is such a critical issue for people across this country. Now, that is different from what's happening in Evanston. At least at this point, he is.
Right. Well, it's all connected, because we know that throughout the 20th century and into the 21st century, housing has been the primary way that families have built wealth. And we are in a country where there is a 10 times as much wealth in the white community as there is in the black community. And that's not there through luck or hard work or through intelligence. But that gap is a result primarily of this type of dispossession on the grounds of housing. And you have stories of Evanston, like the stories of Lewis Weathers, who's a Korean War veteran who came back in 1959 ready to buy a home for his family, but was forced into this contract that ensured that he would never actually own his home, never actually build equity, never ever have an opportunity to build wealth. And now this program is allowing his son to inherit at least some type of remedy where the son might have inherited a home, equity, been able to help build generational wealth. Now there is an effort, at least by the city, to make things right for that family. And that's just an example of what could be happening and will be happening all across the country. And I just want to just add really quickly that what Robin Rue Simmons said, and we feel that she is essentially one of the leaders of this reparations movement, the Rosa Parks, if you will, of this movement. The effort to bring a lawsuit to stop this particular program is meant to send a message to programs in cities and states around the country that this is something that is dangerous or illegal. I want to send a message to also and say that we have your back. At the Ogletree Reparations Bar Association, we are fighting back. We're building an army of lawyers to fight these battles. We want to make sure that everyone knows that it is constitutional to pursue reparations in the United States under the U.S. Constitution.
I want to go back again a few years to 2021 when we spoke to the actor and activist Danny Glover, who served on the National African American Reparations Commission. In 2019, he testified before the House of Representatives in favor of reparations. This is Danny commenting on the reparations effort in Evanston.
I mean, we can't tell you how. I mean, there's no way to express how significant this is. This is part of the multiplicity of expressions by local communities. I mean, we talk about this on a local level. Imagine how that resonates beyond Evanston, Illinois. Imagine the kind of discourse that happens, the discussions in community by ordinary citizens about reparation.
So that's the legendary actor Danny Glover. It's just been revealed today publicly on the Today Show that he's been living with Alzheimer's for a number of years. For people to see all our interviews with Danny, you can go to democracynow.org. But Professor Hansford, if you can comment on what he says, and as we wrap up in this last minute, to also put it in a global perspective, Ghana has recently introduced a UN resolution calling for reparations throughout the diaspora for the legacies of the transatlantic slave trade.
Yes, that's correct, Amy. And that resolution received over 123 yes votes in support of the reparations movement. 50 some odd countries stood to the side, and only 3 countries voted no, those countries being the U.S., Israel, and Argentina. So what we're seeing right now is a global consensus that this is the right thing to do. And when reparations for many years has been seen as some sort of marginal, radical program, the truth of the matter is, when we look at the world, what is radical is the effort to try to fight these programs, to try to turn back the clock, and to try to ignore the inevitability of history. And I actually, in addition to what Danny Glover said, I want to also assert that I believe that reparations is what justice will look like in the 21st century all across the world, because it is it's a way to redefine for our people what it means to do the right thing. It's a way to provide deterrence in a world that is in desperate need of it, and we need to move forward with this program expeditiously.
Justin Hansford, Howard University law professor on the front lines of the legal battle for reparations.
The National Weather Service has issued extreme heat warnings for much of the Midwest and Northeast. We know that temperatures this high are a threat to people's health. More than 2,000 people have died annually in this country from heat-related illnesses in recent years. But high temperatures also pose a threat to mental health, which can also be life-threatening, including increasing the risk of suicide. NPR health correspondent Ritu Chatterjee is here to tell us more. Hi.
Hi, Juana.
So, Ritu, who's most vulnerable to the mental health impacts of heat?
Well, it's mainly people who have pre-existing mental health conditions. Studies show that as temperatures rise, so do visits to the emergency room by people with a range of mental health conditions like, anxiety, depression, psychotic illnesses like schizophrenia, and even people with substance use disorders. And, extreme heat is also linked to mental health-related mortality. A study that just came out this week found that for every 1 degree Celsius rise in temperature, there's a 3% increase in suicide deaths among young people. Here's study author Dr. Joshua Wurtzel. He's a psychiatrist at the Hartford Healthcare Institute of Living and runs the Heat Mind Lab there.
And ultimately, we think that every summer, roughly an additional 100 young adults are dying by suicide due to increasing temperatures.
So, youth who are already at risk of suicide may be more likely to attempt during periods of intense heat.
Okay, and Ritu, why are people with mental health conditions more vulnerable to these high temperatures?
So, scientists have yet to fully understand it, although they think there are a few reasons behind this. Here's Dr. Wurtzel again.
A lot of patients with mental illness at baseline have difficulties regulating their temperature. So patients with depression have higher core body temperatures relative to healthy controls. There are also differences in patients with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder.
And elderly people with dementia. And many psychiatric meds also affect the body's ability to cool down. And all of this, makes people much more vulnerable to heat-related health impacts. And Dr. Wurtzel also told me that heat hinders communication between parts of the brain that talk to each other. And it disrupts sleeps. And we know that poor sleep affects almost every mental illness.
Right. So what are some ways that people with mental health conditions or substance abuse issues can stay safe as we're experiencing all of these extreme temperatures?
Yeah, so some of the same precautions that everybody should be taking. Try and stay indoors as much as possible in air conditioning. Also, for people on psychiatric meds especially, talk to your doctors in advance to understand what your risks are. Read up on what heat-related symptoms can look like. Things like dizziness, exhaustion, brain fog. Seek help when you're not well, and watch out for symptoms of dehydration. So, one thing to remember is people consuming alcohol and certain drugs are particularly at risk. And one of the things I heard over and over again from doctors I talked to is to tap into your social network, really reach out to friends and neighbors and loved ones who are vulnerable and make sure they're doing okay. And anyone struggling with suicidal thoughts, they can text or call the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline 988.
NPR's Ritu Chatterjee, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
What we gon' tell him? We gon' tell a nigga. That's a Kavasi, yeah. You gon' tell that brother? That's a Kavasi, yeah. Everybody singing now. That's a Kavasi, yeah. Everybody singing now. That's a Kavasi, yeah.
We've all heard it before. A glass of wine is good for the heart. A beer after work is harmless. Everything in moderation. But the World Health Organization is now pouring cold water on some of those beliefs. Its latest warning says that a scientifically established safe limit does not exist when it comes to your health. That one drink may actually be too many. The risks start from the first drink. Here's our report.
Is there really a safe amount of alcohol? A little wine is good for your heart. One drink won't hurt. Everything is fine in moderation. These are probably some of the most common things people say about alcohol. But the World Health Organization says it's time to challenge those assumptions. In a new statement published in the Lancet Public Health, the WHO says there is no scientifically established safe amount of alcohol when it comes to your health. That doesn't mean every sip guarantees cancer or disease. It means science has never found a level at which alcohol poses zero risk. The only thing researchers know for certain is this: the less you drink, the lower your risk. For years, people have debated which drink is the healthiest: red wine, champagne, organic, craft. The WHO says that's missing the point. The harm doesn't come from the label on the bottle. It comes from the alcohol itself. Every alcoholic drink contains ethanol, and once inside the body, ethanol breaks down into compounds that can damage DNA and trigger biological changes that increase the risk of cancer. That's why alcohol has long been classified as a Group 1 carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer, the same highest risk category that includes tobacco, asbestos, and radiation. In other words, alcohol isn't just associated with cancer, it is a proven cause of cancer. Most people know excessive drinking can damage the liver. Far fewer realize it can also cause cancer. According to the WHO, alcohol causes at least 7 different types of cancer, including cancers of the breast, bowel, liver, esophagus, mouth, throat, and voice box. Globally, alcohol is linked to around 740,000 new cancer cases every single year. And here's what makes the findings even more striking. Cancer risk isn't limited to heavy drinkers. A large share of alcohol-related cancers occurs among people who drink what many would describe as responsibly. Think a couple of glasses over the weekend is harmless? The numbers tell a different story. Data shows that in the European Union, drinking less than 20 grams of pure alcohol a day, roughly equal to less than 1.5 liters of wine, less than 3.5 liters of beer, or less than 450 milliliters of spirits a week, was linked to nearly 23,000 new cancer cases in 2017. Almost 11,000 of those cases were breast cancer in women. Even more surprising, more than 8,500 cancer cases were linked to people consuming less than 10 grams of alcohol a day, about 1 standard drink. Naturally, people ask the next question: so how much is actually safe? Data suggests the risk begins with the first drink. To declare a safe limit, researchers would need evidence showing that below a certain level, alcohol causes no increased risk of illness or injury. That evidence doesn't exist. Researchers have also found no threshold at which alcohol suddenly switches on its cancer-causing effects. It simply increases as consumption increases. The WHO believes consumers deserve clearer information. It wants alcoholic beverages to carry cancer warning labels, much like cigarette packs warn about smoking. It also wants doctors and healthcare professionals to talk more openly with patients about alcohol's cancer risks. Because despite decades of evidence, public awareness remains surprisingly low. Many people know alcohol can damage the liver. Far fewer know it can increase the risk of breast cancer, bowel cancer, or several other cancers. The WHO isn't saying 1 glass of wine tonight means you'll develop cancer. That's not how risk works. Its message is about probability, not certainty. Every drink carries some degree of risk. The more alcohol you consume over time, the greater that risk becomes. And despite years of debate over healthy drinking, science has yet to identify a level that can honestly be called safe. So if there's one takeaway from the WHO's latest warning, it's this: when it comes to alcohol, less isn't just more. Less is safer, and 1 drink may just be 1 too many.
That's why we have to think as black people. Stop singing and dancing and start thinking.
Wow.
Thinking and reading. I say reading is more important than watching TV. And not getting addicted to looking at those small iPhone screens. See, where you were getting accustomed to looking there in a narrow space as opposed to paying attention broadly to what is happening around you. See, and people are getting addicted.
This week, the nation's second-largest school district, Los Angeles Unified, imposed strict new limits on screen time for its roughly 400,000 students. As William Brangham reports, it's just the latest example of a growing backlash against technology in classrooms across the country.
That's right, Jeff. L.A., like many districts, for years worked aggressively to get technology into the hands of students, to get Chromebooks and iPads into the classrooms. But this new policy, one of the most aggressive in the country, marks a dramatic shift. No screen time will be allowed before second grade, and older students will see sharp limits. 6 hours per week for middle schoolers and 10 hours, including homework time, for high schoolers. So to help understand these new rules and the rationale behind them, we are joined by Nick Melvoin. He's a member of the Los Angeles School Board, and he sponsored this new screen time rule. Nick, thank you so much for being here. Just a decade ago, Los Angeles was spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get technology into the classrooms, and now there is this abrupt shift. How did we get to this point?
Well, thanks for having me. And I think, as policymakers, particularly when it comes to students' educations and livelihoods, we have an opportunity when we know better to do better. And like you mentioned, LA was a real pioneer when it came to trying to bridge the digital divide with laptops and devices and internet. And it was a blessing that we were, because during COVID, of course, that was a lifeline for the hundreds of thousands of students who relied on those in LA for any education. But since we returned to school in person, and I spend time every week in classrooms, I was struck by kind of the over-reliance we had on technology in schools. First, students who were on their cell phones. I brought the resolution to ban smartphones in LA Unified a couple years ago, and we just actually had the results of a survey of our teachers that came back this week that said over 90% of teachers report that engagement is up, mental health challenges are down when it came to cell phones. But I still was seeing so many kids on screens for hours a day. And so I just thought it was important for us to recalibrate and reset students' relationship with technology as we return to school and as we think about the next 10 years.
So how will these limits work in practice? Are teachers going to keep a stopwatch of how much screen time is going to happen for the young students? How are they going to do this?
Well, so the idea, not unlike our cell phone policy, is not to start with the punitive, but really the instructive, and try to win hearts and minds, if you will. And this was developed with educators in mind. We are a first mover here. It was after my resolution came out that the Surgeon General's office had suggested screen time limits. But other than that, there's really no district that has a policy like this. And so it was an iterative process with our teachers. And again, the idea is not to be punitive, but to recalibrate and revert back to, not technology being the default, but being an instructional tool, just that. And so, at elementary school, it is more restrictive. In high school, it presumes the fact that you're going to have certain classes like a computer science or graphic design that may require more screen time. But the idea is that teachers just need to think about that more holistically. And if they're assigning research that's going to be online for homework, they should limit the amount of time that kids are on screens during the day. There's not a punitive piece in place like a teacher log. We want to respect educators or professionals. This is about the amount of time that kids are sitting with a screen, knowing how much screen time they may be getting outside of the school day. We want to make sure that we take put a stake in the ground in how much they should be sitting in front of screens during the school day.
Some of your critics have argued that this doesn't make a clear distinction between harmful screen time, playing games or apps or things that are not educational, and screen time use that is educational. And it goes back to this original question. Do you worry that this could exacerbate the digital divide between wealthier districts where kids could have access to screens more often at home and poorer districts?
Well, what I was responding to, and my teaching career began in South LA, where we saw this digital divide. And I should be clear that this policy still encourages families who need devices and internet to opt in. The district will continue providing that for families who need it, but it won't be the default option. And what we see is that students from lower income backgrounds, because their parents are working multiple jobs, they're the ones who are outside of the school day, actually spending more time on screens. They get home and there's a lot of, whether that's TV time or iPads or devices. And so there's an irony here here because from an equity perspective, it's actually those students who are seeing the deleterious effects of screens throughout the day. And so I think this policy strikes the right balance between saying we still want to make sure that students who need it have access to devices and internet, but we know that those students in need are the ones who actually will benefit the most from a renewed focus on hands-on learning, less time in front of a screen, going outdoors at the elementary school level in particular, more play-based learning. That was my hope with this.
More than a dozen states have been following your lead here. The previous Surgeon General warned against screen time for young people. Do you think this is the beginning of a vanguard, of a pushback against technology in classes?
I do. I think, like I said at the outset, when we know better, we need to do better. And I think that LA Unified is leading what will be a nationwide, if not global, charge to recalibrate and think differently about the promise of ed tech and focus on that tactile hands-on learning and the mental health benefits for kids when they're off of screens.
All right. That is Nick Melvoin of the Los Angeles Unified School District. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Penguin Random House Audio presents Shattered Bonds, The Color of Child Welfare by Dorothy Roberts.
Here's one stark figure. The UN's children's agency, UNICEF, says 680,000 youngsters need humanitarian assistance, and it's warning that many of them could fall victim to child traffickers. Joe English is from UNICEF.
We're working with Venezuela's National Child Protection Authority on identifying unaccompanied and separated children. We had missions going out, in the first days, making sure that we're identifying them, strengthening referral pathways, all of these things which are absolutely critical in terms of making sure that children who have been separated can be home with their parents, if that's possible, or with extended family. If not, and making sure that they are safe. And this system is the protection against exploitation.
Our correspondent, Will Grant, is in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas. I put it to him that on top of the trauma of the earthquakes, it was staggering to think that children in Venezuela are now also in danger from criminal gangs.
Can you imagine? I mean, it is beyond belief that there are criminal organizations who see this as an opportunity to bolster their profits, to use the orphans and the missing children from this tragedy in people trafficking. But it is the truth. It is always the truth in Latin America. These are times after major disasters when children are very, very vulnerable. It was true in Haiti in 2010. It's true in Venezuela in this moment, and it has been before in Venezuela after very, very major disasters like the Vargas mudslide in 1999. But I think it's also very interesting what was said about those statistics you quoted. 680,000 children at risk with extreme need for humanitarian assistance immediately. And that's everything from blankets to food, to shelter, clean drinking water, and of course, trauma and psychological support for what they've been through.
And is the aid getting in that all these people need? You talked about the children, but there's also millions of adults as well.
There are, and I think it is better than it was, obviously, a few days ago with the main airport in Caracas reopening, particularly to aid flights. So there has been improvement. We're even still, of course, seeing the rescue operations going on with international support. So there's international support in different ways, but the aid agencies of different types are here. Everything from World Food Kitchen to the Catholic agencies and others that already operate in Venezuela. Of course, though, this is happening at a time where international humanitarian aid is being cut by a variety of countries, not least Washington cutting the U.S. State Department's aid agency, USAID.
And yet we're hearing that it's going to take years and a massive global effort to rebuild Venezuela. And the US needs to be at the forefront of that. Is that likely, though?
I mean, if the place where I've just come from and is anything to go by, it will take years. And that's a place called Catia la Mar, right on the northern coastline. You go down certain streets in the car and there are so many buildings that are completely collapsed that it's hard to see how the town will rebuild. And of course, with this supposed new relationship between Washington and Caracas, one would expect there to be support from Washington. At this stage, they are in the thick of the emergency effort. There is a very very, very long way to go, but it does remain to be seen whether or not there will be sort of sustained support, sustained partnership between the United States and the government of Delcy Rodriguez, if she remains in power, for the many years that requires that some kind of rebuild and creation of permanent housing, permanent accommodation to the tens, potentially hundreds of thousands of families that need it.
Will Grant in Venezuela. The drug fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 50 times more powerful than heroin, has devastated many communities, especially in the United States, killing hundreds of thousands of people in the past decade or so. White rural populations have been badly affected, but so have metropolitan areas with black and African American populations. In the city of Minneapolis, the fentanyl crisis has touched many Somali families. Bushra Mohammed has been speaking to 2 Somali mothers. One lost her son to a fentanyl overdose. The other watched her son survive addiction and rebuild his life.
I came to the United States looking for peace, but I never found it. That's what Mariam Ahmed Saeed tells me. I've never felt peace, she says. When I met her in Minneapolis, she sits quietly in her living room. In her hands are the documents she cannot bring herself to throw away. Her son's papers, his tax records, and the postmortem report that explains how he died. The report concludes that Samatar died from a fentanyl overdose.
When he died, I decided to do a postmortem. The community has asked me not to do it, but I had to. And I was told he died because of fentanyl overdose.
Mariam fled Somalia's civil war decades ago after witnessing violence and losing loved ones. She hoped the United States would offer safety and a fresh start.
I was young when the war started in my country. My loved ones were killed in front of me.
Instead, she says she found another kind of grief.
Death is very painful, and I live with it till now. I live with a lot of pain.
Fentanyl has become a major driver of overdose deaths in the United States. Officials say deaths remain high despite recent declines from the peak in 2022, when more than 1,000 people died from opioid overdose in Minnesota alone. For Mariam, those statistics are personal. Her son Samatar is one of them. Across Minneapolis, another Somali mother told me she once feared she might receive the same devastating news. Deqa's son became involved in drugs and street violence as a teenager. She remembers nights when fear took over her home.
He will come into the house while being chased. He will ask me to close all the curtains, switch off the lights, and tell us to lie on the floor.
Deqa says she often wondered whether her son would survive, but with her help, he overcame addiction, and the death of his close friend became a turning point.
One thing I am here to let you know is that anybody can do this.
Today, he works with the young people struggling with drugs, trying to prevent them from making the same mistakes.
These babies who are born in the United States.
Julie Pouch is the chief strategist for opioid response in Minneapolis, Hennepin County. She says cultural differences can play a role in vulnerability to addiction.
They are being raised as third culture kids, but they are now totally surrounded by American culture, and they are being exposed to drugs, alcohol, music, clothes, all this other stuff their parents never knew about.
For Deqa, there's a relief that her son survived.
So in the end, I decided to change a lot about myself because these kids nowadays will challenge you. We don't understand each other.
But for Mariam, there are only memories and the papers she keeps close beside her. A mother's search for peace that began during Somalia's war continues today, in a quiet corner of a Minneapolis home.
That report by Bushra Mohammed.
Simple fact is, Anderson, we got two cultures down here. White culture and the colored culture. Now that's the way it always has been. That's the way it always will be.
The rest of America don't see it that way, Mr. Mayor.
The rest of America don't mean jack shit. You in Mississippi now.
7 families in Atala County have launched a lawsuit against the school district.
Yeah, they claim their son's constitutional rights were violated during what they describe as humiliating strip searches at McAdams High School. 16 WAPG's Nicholas Brooks has the story tonight.
In my hand is a statement from the Atala County School District that states that it is aware of the lawsuit, and it also says that students and staff remain its highest priority. Then it says no further comment. But I spoke with the attorney that's representing 7 families, and they say that this is more than about what allegedly happened at McAdams High School, and says it's about the students' protection and their constitutional rights.
Because the manhood in him is the only thing that's going to make him a man. And he ain't gonna be the man he could have been because of that happening.
Children were too embarrassed to tell the full truth because the details were too painful and humiliating.
Those were some of the emotions shared outside the Atala County Courthouse on Wednesday, where several families spoke publicly about allegations involving their sons at McAdams High School. According to the lawsuit, on February the 10th, 7 students were taken from a restroom, lined up in a hallway, and searched one by one. The lawsuit alleges students were ordered to remove their clothes, lower their underwear, expose intimate areas of their bodies, and squat during the searches. According to the lawsuit, no contraband was found. Arma Cooper says she learned what happened when she picked up her son from school.
He began to explain to me what happened. I made a U-turn in the highway like Madea.
Cooper, who worked at McAdams High School for nearly a decade, says she knows searches happen, but says this was different.
And by being in the school system, I know that you're going to have random searches, but not a strip search.
The lawsuit names the Atala County School District Campus Security Officer Leroy Y, Superintendent Ryan Thompson, and other unidentified school employees. The parents say they went to the school to find out what led to the alleged searches.
We have him stating on record that a vape alarm had went off. I can't confirm whether that happened or not, but these are his reasons for conducting a strip search himself.
Now, the district's handbook says officials can conduct reasonable searches based on reasonable suspicion, including searches of a student's person, locker, belongings, or vehicle. The policy does not specifically mention strip searches or require students to remove clothing. Now, the lawsuit seeks compensatory damages, attorney's fees, and court-ordered changes to district policies governing student searches. Reporting in Atala County, I'm Nicholas Brooks, 16 WAPT News.
A pregnant Tacoma woman says she thought she and her unborn baby were going to die when 2 loose dogs moved in and attacked her.
So the attack happened actually on her due date. Drew Mickelson with our news partners out of Seattle spoke with her about her terrifying ordeal.
Those dog bites prompted doctors to induce labor. Renee Wilson's son is now home safe, but she is still here in the hospital recovering from those dog bite wounds and now an infection.
I was carrying a car seat.
Thursday was Renee Wilson's due date, and as she headed out to install her coming baby's car seat, she heard barking.
They ran up and they tried to attack my chihuahua, so I jumped in front of her to stop them from attacking her. It kept latching back on to places after it would bite me, so it bit my arm, then jumped back up and attacked my belly. When I fell to the ground, the other dog grabbed my other leg. They started dragging me, grabbed me by my hair. The dogs had been attacking me for at least a minute or two. When while I was screaming for help, you know.
Neighbors eventually heard the screams, including a man with a broom and a woman.
She was kind of afraid of the dogs, but she still attempted to help me. I begged her for help. I told her that's when the dog had my belly in his mouth, and I was telling her I was pregnant. Please help. Don't let him kill my baby.
She suffered multiple dog bites, and doctors decided to induce, and baby Armani arrived without a scratch.
It appears that there was a broken fence board that was known to the owners, and someone in the home let the dogs out and they escaped through a broken fence board.
Tacoma's animal control officers say the owners of the dogs retrieved them, but the city ended up seizing the American Pit Bull Terrier and an American Bully, declaring them as dangerous. The owners can appeal and a judge can get involved. Otherwise, the dogs will be euthanized.
Only 4 days old. So I'm kind of lonely. I miss him. I wish I was able to be with him. I wish he was able to be here.
Armani and Mom got to spend the weekend together, but she'll remain in the hospital until she can walk again and is free from infection. She can't wait to get home to her baby and her Chihuahua, Katie, who got away without getting hurt. She says her neighbors made the difference.
When I finally looked back up, my neighbor was there, and I was like, oh, thank God, you know, like, please, like, just thinking, please let my baby be okay.
Those dog owners are expected to be charged with misdemeanors, resulting in more than $2,000 in fines. Renee Wilson says they can also expect to face a civil lawsuit from her. In Tacoma, Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
Who has got the secret of safest? No one that makes the other safest nervous. Fucking amen. CIA man. Who can take the sugar from its sack? Pour in LSD and put it back. Fucking amen. CIA man.
Titled Mind Control and Accountability, Uncovering the Truth of the CIA's MK-Ultra Project, the hearing was led by Florida Representative Anna Paulina Luna, who highlighted the widespread destruction of files when the program eventually came to an end, telling us after what occurred is, quote, criminal in nature.
It's obviously horrifying. It's horrifying that this went unvetted, unchecked, and that there was no accountability.
On Capitol Hill Tuesday, Representative Luna spearheading efforts to uncover the truth about MK-Ultra experiments, sharing that the CIA is working to declassify recently discovered files involving a forgery program, plus highlighting the widespread destruction of files.
This program, when it did end, the men who ran it did not cooperate with investigators. They did not come forward. They committed another crime. They destroyed evidence.
MK-Ultra was a top-secret illegal experimentation program run by the CIA from 1953 to 1973. It was designed to develop mind control techniques, brainwashing procedures, and truth serums used for espionage, interrogation, and psychological torture.
I do believe that the government should compensate victims and their families, specifically pertaining to this awful program. We also heard that there was horrifying experimentation taking place at juvenile detention facilities on American wayward children.
Speaking with the National News Desk Tuesday, Luna adding she believes there needs to be a task force put together, possibly by the DOJ, noting they were just made aware of a CIA house in Germany that allegedly tortured victims of MK-Ultra.
So we're actually reaching out to the German government. I actually have, coincidentally enough, meetings tomorrow with some members of their parliament to see if we can basically send out law enforcement to see if we're able to locate remains and identify the people potentially that were hurt by this program.
Now, among those testifying, investigative journalist Tom O'Neill, sharing that historical records show previous investigators and lawmakers 50 years ago were allegedly intentionally denied the truth regarding the program.
Representatives of the CIA told Congress and the American people that its 25-year effort to control human behavior had been a colossal failure. I believe Congress was never told the truth about what this program actually achieved.
Meanwhile, Luna argues, according to witness testimony, it looks like those participating in the program were able to effectively crack the code on programming humans, which makes their job to identify and correct historical records pivotal.
But also, too, to ensure that this never happens again, we have to be able to identify it currently and how it's evolved potentially, which is what we're trying to do currently.
Now, according to Luna, MKUltra was comprised of at least 149 sub-projects operating across 80 institutions and involved 185 non-government researchers. That allegedly includes a $375,000 CIA contribution to a hospital research wing so the agency could use unaware patients as experimental subjects. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear who are not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Say that again.
Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
New at 6, a 70-year-old man is in the hospital after police say Brandon Watt assaulted him with a 2x4 yesterday. News 10 NBC's Aaron Mahin spoke with the victim's family and Newark police to learn what happened.
This is where Johnny White's family says Brandon Watt beat him yesterday. I'm about to show you an image of what White looked like immediately after the assault and a warning that some might find this image hard to look at. The assault left White with a broken nose, broken eye socket, and stitches over his ears.
I saw him laying in that bed and it didn't look real, to be honest. It was terrible.
I spoke with two of White's daughters. They stayed with him overnight, taking turns to check on White in the emergency department. They tell me that Watt had been harassing their dad for weeks. Police tell me that's something they're investigating.
My father is 70 years old. He did not deserve this. And he will give you the shirt off his back. He goes to work every day. He loves his animals. He loves his wife. They've been married for over 20 years. And he's lived in Newark 18 years. Yeah. Nothing like this ever happened to my father.
I stopped by the Newark Police Department and spoke with Chief Gonzalez. He told me that Watt cooperated until he found out he was going to jail. And that in addition to the assault charges, Watt also faces one count of endangering the welfare of a child, since police say he had his daughter with him at the time of the assault. The chief tells me he's not ruling out that it could be racially motivated, but in order to confirm, he needs to speak with White once he's healthy enough to make a statement.
There's really still hate out there, and people really solely just hate because you're black. And that's the sad part. We should all, the way the world is set up right now, like, everybody needs help, everybody needs love, and everybody needs family. Like, we shouldn't be just going on somebody's property and abusing them.
Police say that Watt's charges could change after speaking to White. So far in their investigation, they've spoken to Watt, 2 witnesses, and seen video evidence of the assault. Reporting from Newark, Aaron Mahin, News 10 NBC.
Watt is in custody in the Wayne County Jail. In addition to assault and endangering the welfare of a child, he also faces 1 count of criminal possession of a weapon.
He had a weapon. He had a weapon. Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Race soldiers do not take holidays, and the cows does not either. Today's date, Saturday, July 4, 2026. So I have been told. Let me get my PSA first, particularly given the report that they said, almost sound like they say, hey, sobriety would be best. The risk with alcohol begins with drink number 1. There is no safe amount of alcohol to consume. Keep that in mind for your 4th of July weekend. Maybe skip that Mad Dog, Hennessy, they call it the hen dog. Put that tequila down, vodka, wine, whatever it is. Jack Daniels, put that down. Corn liquor. They will probably have sobriety checkpoints and all the rest of it. Might be, hey, Brandon Watt with a 2x4 and you got to make a quick decision to save your life. sobriety would be best, especially if you're a young person. The strip searches, especially you don't have a lengthy driving experience, right? You've only been on the road for a few months or years or whatever it is. You especially do not want to be classified as black. You're out driving around late, and then, God forbid, you got a bunch of black people in your vehicle. Oh, man. They pull all of you over, have all of you pull your pants down and squat. Have that be your 4th of July Instagram pic. Sobriety would be best. If you got to go out, right? That's tonight, tomorrow night, maybe even extend into the new week. I would say get to one location and stay there. Pick whatever, if somebody has a nice house or you rent a spot or whatever, but I would not encourage that we got to go out hopping in this spot, that spot, this spot, and that spot, and this 2, 3, 4, even 12, 1. We're out running around. Hey, you are asking for trouble. And even if it's not enforcement officers or whatever, they stop you. Even if it's not that, you got all these intoxicated folks out here acting a fool. They had that segment at the beginning on NPR about the tradition of pranks on July 3rd, and we go get the outhouse and the bonfire and get the drunk and put his car on stilts and all this old nonsense. They still do that now, man. You can go get the newspaper right. You ain't got to go get no microfilm and dig through the catacombs and archives. You can go get the newspaper for today, July 4, 2026, or yesterday, July 3. White people done burned down people's house. They had a case in California. Some young teenage girls got a firecracker, threw it in a house room. They threw it in a bed, and actually threw it in a room for a female who was expecting a child. The room that they threw the firecracker in, the nursery for her coming child, caught on fire, set the whole house on fire. And they got bunches of reports of different fireworks. And today was just the 4th. These incidents started popping up midweek before we even got to Friday, July 3. Burning the whole house down and all this old craziness. Had been saying before, like, hey, let's make sure, let's see if we can get through the weekend. We have all our fingers, toes, people in the U.S., right? Thank goodness. People outside the U.S. like, what is going on? They losing fingers, and they act a fool over here for July 4. Can't just sit inside and watch Will Smith movies. Oh, no. We got to go burn the whole neighborhood down, which they did. They got that in California, too, where they didn't just, it caught one house on fire, and then the flames spread to some of the other houses in the neighborhood. Many reasons. Sobriety would be best. We don't have nothing to celebrate anyway in the system of white supremacy racism. I would not encourage anything where you got to go get a lighter and matches and all that. Hey. Now, I know I'm in Seattle. Temperature here, I thought we were going to get to 70 degrees today, and we may have, but I suspect that didn't happen because it was 67 degrees a few moments ago when I checked, and that was at about 5:30 p.m. Pacific. So unless we very briefly scraped 70 and then it plummeted right back down by 5:30, which I don't think happened. So I'm not sure we even made it to 70 degrees today. I'm not complaining because, hey, we're not in the heat wave, no air conditioning. The sun did come out today, so and it didn't rain. So I have zero complaints about the weather, zero. We didn't have no wildfires either, so zero. But I'm just saying, they got wildfires and all that craziness happening in places. You got lots of reasons not to do the fireworks. They got drone displays and all the rest of it. You can do that. You can watch on TV. Keep it safe and put that mad dog down as well. Sobriety would be best. That's it. We will be here on Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, normal time. White guest. We just finished the second worst book ever written, Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, Lies, Filth, Anti-Blackness, Minstrelsy even, I would say. Easily one of the worst book, or second worst, not one of the worst, the second worst book I've ever read. Easily. But in connection, or even one of the other reasons, such a lengthy list of why that book is repulsive and side-eye to all the black people who've, she omits, she has a whole section about Chicago. What, you see? See, can you hear that? Can you hear that? Fireworks, white people, alcohol, deadly trio. Anyway, we will be here Monday. Now, I said Michelle Alexander Lang. Yeah, sure, that's Michelle, too. The police, they go out and get you, put some felonies on you. But that book is repulsive. She omits John Burge. She has a whole section on Chicago, white supremacy, racism, how all these black dudes get locked up and all the rest of it. No mention of John Burge at all. Even in the anniversary where she gets to revise and add and all. Nope. We will chat it up on Monday about white supremacy, racism, John Burge, and we might even hear some of the same commentary, them old strip searches, and say, really, just for Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, Chicago native, Pamela Evans Harris. She was not a Chicago native, but she lived and spent many years in Chicago. That's where she transitioned. Chicago, Illinois. Lauren Cresslove, Chicago native. Hey, the late Jesse Jackson Sr., not a Chicago native, South Carolina stand up, but for sure, Jesse Jackson, Chicago. Hey, if you're going to Jesse Jackson talking about John Burge, Jesse Jackson knew all about John Burge. How could he not? How could he not talk about Chicago and not talk about Jesse Jackson Sr., the late, great? Anyway, we will talk about Monday, white supremacy, racism, John Burge, the masters of genital mutilation, racist man, racist woman, racist child. We will chat it up on Monday. Normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And I guess if you, either way, if you that program sounds interesting, so if you would be interested in hearing that, particularly if you got connections to Chicago or interested in New Jim Crow even, should be interested in Monday. Or if you, I think the cows might be at least a teaspoon constructive in general. Make sure Gus T stays safe. Man, Monday is July 6th, so this has easily been the most dangerous summer that I've had in Seattle in some times. And many of we had the heat wave 5 years back, man, most dangerous weather event in the history of Washington State. So summer can be treacherous out here. Man, I thought, it's going to be what they say, smooth sailing from here on out. We got through graduation season. I don't know where all of you folks, are in the universe, but here in Seattle, just the University of Washington alone, and they have certainly all the high schools and all that stuff, but they have other college universities here in Seattle. But just with the University of Washington, its student body is 60,000 60,000 plus. When they have graduation, and I mean, certainly not everybody's a senior, so you don't have 60,000 people graduating, but man, even if you take less than a fourth of 60,000, that is a lot of people, caps and gowns and parents and pictures and grandma and little brothers. Man, it paralyzes an entire section of town. I mean, it's student body 60,000. Then you got the grad students and all doing that. Man, okay, so you got that. Pride. Now, I know the LGBTQ, full of say, changing everything. They have that in lots of different places. Big thing in California, San Francisco, Bay Area. Mom has talked to us about that before. Pride is a big deal here in Washington State and Seattle specifically. They do it big. And it's June. That's all month, and it kind of culminates. Talked about the FIFA match last week with Egypt. They were very, I think it was Egypt and Iran. They were very upset about that because they don't do all that LGBTQ, and they made that the Pride match because that's the culmination. They had the big parade last Sunday here in Seattle, and they tie down all the streets and do the concerts and outdoor performances and events and all the rest of it, and just got to show out for all of that. We didn't even have good weather, right? Like I told you, it's been cold. Sun didn't even come out last Sunday. It was foggy and cloudy. I don't even think it got above like 66 degrees. It was really cool. Doesn't matter. We put a jacket on and we come out in full force anyway. LGBTQIA+. All of that madness. But hey, July. We got past all that. Hey, July 4, all the shenanigans, and they act a fool. Now, you're not supposed to have fireworks. In Seattle proper, they were doing fireworks last night. You're not supposed to have fireworks out in Shoreline. They had signs posted like weeks in advance. I seen them doing fireworks out in Shoreline this week, acting a fool. Even with all that, they get the mad dog and got to go. Even with all that, hey, we are past 6 p.m. Pacific. We're closing in on midnight. It'll be July 5, Sunday. Hey, we have almost made it through the July 4 weekend. Not totally, but I mean more than halfway through. And more than halfway through July 4, the actual date. Progress, right? Hanging in. Man, I thought like smooth sailing. We done got through most of the really difficult parts and even the flipping FIFA tournament. We didn't miss everything down to one final game here in Seattle. Rest of the tournament will go on, but last game here in Seattle will be on Monday, same date as our program, John Burge. That is the game. The U.S. men's national team comes here to Seattle. Man. I've been telling you, I had to coordinate and, got to avoid this part of town because they got the Pride March, and, don't want to get caught in all that. Got to avoid going downtown because I don't like going down there anyway. And then now you double whammy it with all the FIFA and the soccer and the tournament and the watch parties. Can't go down there for like the whole month or a whole 30-day period because it's overlap from June to July. Got to avoid the U District area because they got graduation and all that. Man, to get through all of that, and now the men's team comes here. So certainly got to avoid all of downtown, but I mean, they will probably be acting a fool all over the city, and particularly if the U.S. team wins. Oh man. Pray for Gus T. Hoping to get through. Just feel like I keep saying that. Just hoping to just have to take it one day at a time. One day at a time. We can't even focus on Monday because it's whole July 4 weekend. So we'll focus on getting through the rest of today safely. Sunday, and then Monday. We'll worry about Tuesday at a much later date. But for right now, safety for Gussie, safety for everyone, right? But man, I'm thinking, I talked about it. I think I mentioned it, like, man, if they have some of the African teams, they were talking about it, they come here, like maybe Brazil, one of them, South American teams, maybe I go check out some of the festivities, see some of the non-white people who travel. Did you experience any racism since you've been here? I did not for a moment in my little peanut-sized brain computer think, oh man, the U.S. team, they might actually end up coming here and we could have a real fracas. I did not consider that at all. Stupid me. Hide out for another set of days. Let's see. Invest if you think the C.O.W.S is constructive. Hit the blog racism-notes.blogspot.com. racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button in the top right corner. Beneath the button, you'll see the links for Cash App, Venmo, as well as PayPal. Enormous gratitude for all the folks who've invested, kept us on the air 17 plus years, hopefully worthy of your time and energy. I have generally tried to share the links, or I always share the links once we finish the program, once it's done, and once it posts. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer for the link to post, but once it's available, I post the link for the program, whether it's within minutes of the program being done. If the link posts quickly, at the latest, it'll be first thing the next morning. I'll go to sleep or what have you, and overnight the link will be available, and bam, I'll have it posted, and it'll be available. So if you check any of our social media sites, always make sure to have the links available. C.O.W.S is available at Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Podbean, Podbay.fm, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcast. Lots of other places, but just trying to pick some of the places, folks would think. Podbean specifically, they used to allow you to access the content via a browser on your laptop or device. Seems now they might be restricting it to using the app on your phone or what have you. So content is still there, just restricted. I try to pick things that are both so that people can pull them up on their browser or their phone app. And I try to pick sites where it works pretty seamlessly so you won't have difficulties. It'll play and all that. With Apple Podcasts, I know if you say, because I don't say N-word, right? Try not to sanitize things so we're not confused. But if you don't say N-word, right, they sanitize you and give you an explicit rating on Apple Podcasts where you have to create an account, sign in to listen. Just the FYI, so make sure if that's the platform that you choose, Apple Podcasts, which is pretty popular, easily accessible, just create an account, very easy. Then you can log in and access the full episode, no problem. Let's see. Last thing I will say, the new month just began. We'll have new book. There was two things. One, we just finished Raggedy Lion, High Yellow Wench, Michelle Alexander's New Jim Crow yesterday, meaning we will have a brand new book for Friday. I will announce on Monday, once our guest departs, we have Constructive Exchange. I'll announce the new book, in case folks want to nab. Reclaiming Our Crown, the biography Kings. I cannot wait. I'd seen this book a while back, and this is kind of a twofer because I also appreciate when we get to read books that are new. Victims of White Supremacy. All of us, we should read at least one nonfiction book published the current calendar year. We should do this every year, long as the system of white supremacy exists. You have way too many people who do not read, way too many victims of racism who do not read and seriously study the system of white supremacy. This is one way to combat that, and we here at the C.O.W.S, Catherine Massey Book Club, walk it better than we talk it. So not only will be reading a biography, but a biography published in 2026. Love it. But we'll announce the book on Monday and get cracking, fresh start. And I mean, we have nowhere to go but up. Can't wait. So that's one. And then two, man, it is a brand new month, July, right? Got through June. Like I said, June was treacherous. July doesn't look any better. But Gus T, doing my best to stay safe, not do dumb things, stay alive and constructive in the system of white supremacy so that I can continue to do attempted counter-racist work. If my spring efforts were constructive, that harvest should begin to bear fruit, metaphor for the seasons, this month. The volume of the harvest should be proportionate to the counter-racist grind that Gus T was engaged in for the spring of 2026. So, we shall see. July will be a show, man. It should start immediately. Now, some of this, I just have to get up and check my email. It's like, what's that movie? Forrest Gump? I don't know if Mr. Fuller talked about that one. Old Tom Hanks. He said, life is like a box of chocolates. Wellsing moment. You never know what you are going to get. That's what the month of July is going to be like for Gus T. Although, if I have been on my counter-racist grind for the spring of 2026, there should be some clunkers. Ew, what is this? Spit that out. Should be a few of those. But, woo, there should be some choice pieces of chocolate Wellsing moment for the month of July. Like, wow. Just wow. To be specific, hey, the counter-racist revealed, not counting any of the C.O.W.S programs, we kick all that to the side. Did you have a guest on from Venezuela this year? Yep. Did you have a guest on from Belgium? Yep, that's who we're playing in the soccer game on Monday. Yep, forget all that. We kick all that to the side. But securing Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's FBI folder, at least the portions they gave me thus far. Securing Neely Fuller Jr.'s Bureau of Engraving and Printing Employee Personnel file. Securing 100 pages of FBI records on Johnny Cochran. And then even more recently, securing FBI's documents on the murder of Gregory Johnson. You have to look online if you don't remember that one. One of those black males who was killed in a fraternity. Suspiciously. But that's just the so far. Put that to the side. July should be banner. We will have to see. We will give updates, and hey, we'll be here. If we get any goodies on Monday, we'll have our guests, so we'll be able to update if we get any goodies, and then we'll be here, all the normal programs, so opportunities to update. And then we have more white guests coming on from, we even had a reschedule because we had a white guest who was supposed to be with us last month. We got a reschedule. He'll be coming shortly. I think in about a week he should be popping up on the program. So we'll have lots of opportunities to update. And okay, what did reveal? We get any goodies? constructive information to help us get us being non-white people, victims of racism, to get a more accurate understanding of white supremacy racism, what it means to be classified as white, and to use this information to replace white supremacy with justice. So stay tuned. We shall see. Has Gus T been constructive for 2026 with his time and energy? Let's find out. The reports that we heard today, they talked about the rise of African football and all of the teams that won. They said that the white countries groused and complained, sounding affirmative action-ish. They groused and complained, and how are you going to allow these extra slots for these Negro teams in Africa? You know they don't deserve it. And then ended up having 9 of the 10 qualified for the knockout round. Like, wow. Bravo, bravo, bravo. I'm sure some of them were upset about that. I was rooting for Democratic Republic of Congo. They did. They were up 2-0 in their elimination game, but then they lost 3-2 to England. I was a little bummed about that. But Morocco, Egypt, 2 teams left from the continent, both, and Morocco knocked Canada out today. We are very close to the Canadian border, so there were a lot of Canadian folks here cheering. They were quite bummed that Morocco advanced. But the African teams, again, nothing is more important than replacing white supremacy with justice, not even these ball games. But this might be kind of a metaphor for what's going to be taking place in all areas of people activity, not just athletics. One, just population alone. All that talk about fertility and we don't have enough white babies being born, that impacts your soccer club. You don't have enough young people who going to go out there and kick the ball around. That's what I was thinking too. The rise of African football should mean, hey, we are keeping all of our players. Because I could see a future. I mean, you even see now, that's why they got all that white supremacy with the Netherlands, the Dutch team, where they're going to be cursing all the black boys because they missed the penalty kick. Hey, we keep all our black boys. We don't have to worry about it. You field your raggedy white team, and let's see if you can go out and win in 20. I have to fast forward from now, like 40 years. Fast forward, so we get to, what is that, 2044. Let's see. Field your pale white team, and let's see if you can win then. See, matter of fact, hey, do you even have enough white boys to field a team? That would be, hey, you want to see some anxiety about white genetic annihilation, let it start be where all of the black boys are dominating FIFA, where it starts to look the same way like the NBA and all that. Oh my God. Woo. And it's not even Negroes. Africans. But they should keep their own players. Like, forget all that. Nope, we're not even letting y'all steal the migrants because you let us drown and you said, oh no, we don't want all these migrants and what are y'all doing up in here? Get on out of here. We're not giving no asylum. Fine. We don't keep all our players. The segment on so-called Islamophobia, they probably have a whole lot of that for the Moroccan team, aren't they? Muslims? Isn't that so? Isn't that so? I'm a little ignorant. Isn't that so? They talked about so-called Islamophobia, white supremacy, racism in Texas. Said we don't want no Sharia law in Houston and all the rest of it. I translate that as white supremacy, racism. That's the exact same sort of phrasing and gripe that Anders Breivik had. Remember him over in Norway? I got to go and kill all these dozens of people and bombs and blowing up stuff. Yeah, and that was in July too, not July 4, but that was in July. I got to do all this. I don't want no Sharia law and got all this non-white culture and these Muslims, non-white people. Again, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. That's who they're complaining about. If these were blue-eyed people and they were just, observing their so-called Muslim faith, pray 5 times a day to back up off me with all that pork, but they were classified as white. I don't think this would be a problem. I don't think it would be all that. You got to convert to Christianity and we're not going to have all this thing. I don't think all this would be a problem. Religion of white supremacy. They say you got a whole lot of white people here right now. They don't even practice Christianity. What you mean convert to Christianity? What you mean? Religion of white supremacy. Let's see. The segment on reparations in Evanston, Illinois. Evanston, for people who don't know geography, maybe you haven't visited Illinois, Evanston is like a suburb of Chicago. If you go to Chicago, very easy to make a little short venture over to Evanston. I've been to Evanston specifically and Chicago. And then 2, with the reparations project in Evanston, I had already played the segment where they talked about the reparations program in Evanston, and specifically we played it way back, compensatory call-in from 2022, 4 years ago. The report, for some people, Evanston's reparations program remains incomplete. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just want to scroll down to give a quick little, okay. Alderman Peter Braithwaite said the $25,000 reparations payment funded through taxes on marijuana sales in the city doesn't begin to scratch the surface, but he's proud of Evanston for being the first city to pass a local reparations initiative. As is Robin Sue Simmons, who sparked the conversation of local reparations and now serves on the National African American Reparations Commission. Simmons is the founder and executive director of First Repair. We've had the audacity to advance reparations in Evanston. The implementation of the program is even more detailed in the broad work of understanding the harm, educating our community, and identifying the remedy, said Simmons. I want to make sure I get one key part. Make sure. Okay, here we go. The program has made a positive impact for a handful of residents. On January 13, 2022, Evanston picked the initial 16 grant recipients from a pool of 600 approved applicants using a bingo wheel. That's what I remembered specifically. The bingo wheel. Like, are you serious? They had, now, you can get this report. It's on WBEZ, Chicago Public Radio, where they go into some of the other concerns that black people raised about this program, and the scope is too narrow, and it doesn't do enough, and excludes a lot of people. They had 600 applicants, and they picked 16. So you can, lots of concerns, but a bingo. Now, this is the program that President Trump is suing. The bingo wheel and 16 applicants. This is the program that, hey, y'all cheating. This is unconstitutional. What's going on here? All this corruption in Illinois. What's going on? Are you see the bingo wheel program? That's what you're talking about? For house repairs, it's not even like you get a check. You can just go out and snort crack cocaine and buy gold chains and Michael Jordan jerseys. Like, no, very, very limited. Very, very limited number of people even can qualify to get this assistance if they pick you. And then it's very narrow, just housing imprint. I don't even think it's like you can just, they give you money, you can go get a house or something. I don't even think it's that. Very narrow in focus. And this is, oh no, we can't have all that. This is disgraceful. And even, that was Democracy Now!, my BFF Amy Goodman. They had black male Justin Hansford, Howard University black male, speaking in support of the reparations program. I said for years, I'm not interested in hearing any black people talk about reparations. I played that report more just to get information about President Trump's efforts to block this program, because we've already talked about it. I'm familiar with it. Maybe some of y'all remember this as well, and or knew this from maybe being close or associated with Chicago. But if this little raggedy $25,000 program for a limited number of people. If this is enough to, hey, get the president involved and we got to obstruct this and y'all can't continue this, you better cut that out right now and hopefully discourage other locations or white people from doing the same, are white people going to voluntarily stop practicing white supremacy racism? Are white people going to do any sort of serious repair for the countless acts of white supremacy racism, not just what they did in Evanston, but widespread? We can't even, this is just like housing repairs and such. The report that we played before, they do have some victims who said, hey, I'm a black female, Ramona Burton, I'll take the money, use it to make repairs on my house, needed repairs on my house. But I mean, really? We supposed to go out and cut a jig, set off fireworks for this? Like, come on. Anywho, let's see. And they did mention Danny Glover in that segment. I did appreciate suspected racist Amy Goodman. She did make mention, Mr. Glover, he did announce that he's been suffering from Alzheimer's disease apparently for some time now. They just made it public this week. Some of our listeners were curious about his diet, health, and saying, oh man, maybe he can go vegan and maybe that'll help with his health concerns, particularly with clarity for his thinking. And I said, man, I think Danny Glover, no, I don't profess to be an expert on him. I haven't kept up with his life and times and such, but I thought he was pretty conscious with regards to diet, like he didn't just go around eating Snicker bars and potato chips all day long. And then I checked Danny Glover, like Gus T, has been a proud plant-based eater for some time. Now, certainly you can be plant-based and still eat a lot of goofy food, but it does seem like he at least has been making an effort to eat quality foods and recognizes the importance of getting some greens, fiber in his diet. But definitely thoughts, prayers with the great Danny Glover, affectionately known as Mr. Hansford, black male from Howard, was talking about reparations. He did use a metaphor in talking about some of his black colleagues who've been fighting for reparations and saying that one female member calling her the Rosa Parks of the movement. I don't know what that means. I've said for years we should really stop using that movement. I can't speak for Mr. Hansford, but most of the black people that I know are not well enough informed about Rosa Parks to really comment on her at all. They just know that she didn't give up her seat on the bus, and that's about it. If you don't know anything else about Rosa Parks other than that, you should not speak on Rosa Parks, and even beyond, that metaphor should be retired. We just heard from Claudette Colvin, so people who are informed about Rosa Parks, you should be informed enough to know she was not the first to sit down on the bus. Lots of black people did that. So, no. And the rest of it, I find appalling and repulsive with regards to our ignorance of Rosa Parks. Like, man, Rosa Parks had been an activist for 20 years, an attempted counter-racist, for 20 years before she got to that moment on the bus. So what are you talking about? Like, maybe that's what they mean. Like Rosa Parks, who for an entire life dedicated the time and energy that she had to replacing white supremacy with justice. Maybe that's what they mean. The Rosa Parks of reparations. They've been doing this forever, but I mean, man, that is not no title that I would give out lightly. It ain't that many Rosa Parks of anything with what, and I said also, it's not just that. Rosa Parks could have been killed. Rosa Parks refused to get up or to give up her seat on the bus in Alabama. She did not pass away in Alabama. Why is that? Because she could have been killed. They threatened her entire family, threatened to kill her entire family. So it would have to be not just this person devoted an entire life's worth of time and energy to replacing white supremacy with justice or a specific cause within that. They did this in the face of death and remained unwavering to replacing white supremacy with justice. That would be like, oh, okay, Rosa Parks. But again, I don't know. so many people say that and the Jackie Robinson, the Rosa Parks of this and the Jackie, all of that is really tacky and trifling. It is super discourteous to both Robinson and Parks. And again, I will reiterate strongly, most of the people who make these comparisons are spectacularly ignorant about Parks and Robinson. Just say what you got to say and leave these people out of it. Let's see. The report on extreme heat and its impact on mental health. That was all news to me. Again, I will say this, sitting in Seattle where the temperature has dropped down to 66 degrees, and it's not even 7 p.m. here. That's why I'm saying I'm incredulous that it ever got to 70 degrees today, because I checked the temperature at almost noon. It wasn't even 65 degrees. I checked the temperature at 5, and it was 67 degrees. It was cloudy for most of the day, so I just have a hard time believing that we, for like 30 seconds, got to 70, and then it dropped back down. So, ain't no extreme nothing here. 66. But the segment on extreme heat and its impact on mental health, I'd never heard that before. I'd never thought of that before. Just, I had to sit and listen. Wow. I will say, 5 years ago, I do remember them saying the deadliest weather event in Washington state history recorded by white people, those 3 days of extreme triple-digit heat that we had. Deadly, and I do remember that. And I remember many outlets saying, oh yeah, extreme heat is way more dangerous than extreme cold and kills more people and blah, blah, blah. I just don't remember the mental health aspect. Particularly, they got into younger people, an increased rate of suicide. And they got very meticulous about it. Like, with each degree Celsius rise, boom, this is the increase in youth suicides specifically. And then mental health events. So I'm just, wow. The people, and they have lots of data. For the U.S., I would expect it would be the same other parts of the world. Certainly for the U.S., the people who experience the most trauma, danger, when they have triple-digit heat and that high humidity and it lasts for a long time and you don't get that cooling effect in the evening, you still get really high temperatures at night, and then it just spikes right back up when the sun comes up in the morning. The people who are at most danger, non-white people, black people, that's explicitly what they said 2021 when we had our heat event. Most of those deaths and medical room emergencies and such that they had, non-white people, black people who already are not healthy because of racism. And then we don't have the best amenities. So in a house that doesn't have air conditioning or all the rest of it, or in a house that traps a lot of that heat, not energy efficient, all of that, don't have proper ventilation. They talked about that with COVID-19. All of that. Who's going to be most impacted? Usual suspects. And now within that too, they said all that extreme heat impacts sleep. That I am very familiar with. They said, hey, you mess your sleep up, that affects everything in the most harmful way. Sleep, massively important. Even that right there, like, oh man, obviously I don't really know nothing about that currently, but I do remember 80 degrees at night, 85 degrees at night, 90 degrees at night, and trying to sleep. Especially if you don't have AC. Ick. I remember it vividly. Not fun at all. And that, I'm not surprised that you get that extreme heat and your sleep gets messed up. You have all them hot and muggy and humid nights, and then your mental health suffers. I'm not surprised about that at all. They gave great suggestions and doing the best you can. Try to stay inside, stay hydrated as best you can, and plot in advance. That's another thing too. If you know you are in an environment where you don't have AC, that's one. Check the news in advance so you don't get blindsided and thinking it's just going to be a normal, typical day, And then, whoa, it's 95 degrees. Like, what's going on? Check in advance. So if you need to make adjustments to your schedule, or maybe see if you can stay someplace else that does have air conditioning for a couple of days, or adjust kind of where you hang out for a couple of days so you can be in spots that do have air conditioning. That is much easier when you know in advance, like, uh-oh, they're already saying Monday is going to be a hot one. Change things around a little bit and drink more water. The report, the alcohol, I already said, sobriety would be best. They said the risks begin from drink number 1. I am not surprised. They had said before that anything more than 1 drink is heading towards carcinogenic. This report just says, hey, sobriety would be best. You don't need the 1. The risk begins with drink 1. And when they went over all the different types of cancer that alcohol consumption contributes to, I thought Chadwick Boseman, D'Angelo. I'm not saying that they got their cancer, different types of cancer, from alcohol consumption. I'm ignorant. Obviously, I haven't looked at their medical records. Obviously, I am not a doctor. I am a worthless Negro from Virginia. But unless I've been misinformed, they both died from different types of cancer, and specifically gastrointestinal cancers. If what they are saying is accurate, if the risk begins with 1 drink, if you have black people like Gus T. Renegade, D'Angelo, Chadwick Boseman, we're already not healthy because of the system of white supremacy racism, and then you give us a really bad diet, put us, what they say, put us in the food deserts, dump all the ultra-processed foods on us, and then we have a sip of the Mad Dog. Now, that's what I say. I'm not saying these folks are alcoholic or they drink all the time or anything of that nature, but I'm just saying if they say the risk is 1 drink, all it takes, hey, Chad, you want a sip of the old Hennessy? I just said 1, and I said a sip. I didn't say drink the whole bottle, just 1. And that might be all the nudge you need, and boop, we done lost Chadwick Boseman. Hey, D'Angelo, you want a sip of this old hen dog? That's all you need, 1 sip, and that might be enough with everything else in the system of white supremacy. That might be enough. Boop, we done lost D'Angelo. If that is the case, then I have every reason to suspect that's probably true. They were just talking about why we got all these gastrointestinal cancers, and maybe that's a part of it. People eat bad food. Probably this generation probably eats the worst food ever, I would think. They didn't, like I said there before, they didn't have all these ultra-processed foods 60 years ago. So you combine eating probably the worst diet that we've eaten in a minute, and then you get your old glass of the hen dog or whatever you're going to drink, the Mad Dog or whatever you're going to drink, even the wine, they said, any of it, the wine, whatever, any of it, corn, liquor, whatever. That might be all the nudge that we need for victims of white supremacy. And then you put the epigenetics in there too. Sobriety would be best. They already dump a lot of carcinogens on us anyway. We don't need to pick up no extras. Share that one with the young folks, because they said they have more younger people are already trending in that direction anyway, not drinking. Right on. Make sure if you have children, you want your children to be a part of a dry generation. We don't do none of that. We don't do none of that. We let all of y'all do all the sipping and drinking and Cavassier, and we leave that to Grandpa. We saw what happened to them. We ain't going to do that. We're going to live to be healthy and 100. Let's see. That report in Los Angeles where they said they're putting a restriction on the screens, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing smacked one. Again, the genius, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. That's why J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI began following her at least age 19. maybe before. But the genius, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, she told us in July 2013, days after the verdict in the Trayvon Martin murder trial, she said, get off those phones. Reading is more important than watching television. People are getting addicted to looking at those screens. She said that 13 years ago. The genius, way ahead of the curve, as usual. But they said down in L.A., they said, hey, man, we're restricting this 6 hours. For the middle school students, you get a little bit more for high schoolers. The whole time I thought Bay Area mom, now she's not in L.A. San Francisco, that's what, hour and a half flight from L.A., maybe a little more than an hour. Probably not an hour and a half, a little more than an hour, depending on when and everything. But Bay Area mom been telling us all the little non-white children that she talks about, I'm on my tablet, iPad, screen all day long. Now, I do 6 hours in one day. What you mean 6 hours for the week? I'm going to do 6 hours today and then go home and add on another 8 hours. She said, remember, she said, the little fella got 2 tablets. Why he got 2 tablets? Battery go out on the one, bang. Switch to the other while it charges up. I can't be without it. I can't be without my screen. People getting addicted. Little people getting addicted. They said within the report, they said, isn't this going to exacerbate what they call the digital divide system of white supremacy racism, where non-white children don't have access to technology and constructive academic resources? They said, well, actually, what we found, perversely, the non-white children, little Jamal, little Devontae, they actually spend all the time on the screen. I've heard that before. And Bay Area mom, she tell us all the time. Now, I'm not saying all white parents, but apparently you have a few more white parents. They know. Can't have the next generation of race soldier. They can't just be on that screen all day long. Let's go do some reading. Let's go to the beach. Let's go to the park. System of white supremacy racism. That's why Fuller say attempted parents, attempted fathers, attempted mothers. Hey, they even said in the report, hey, some of these victims, attempted parents, they got to work 2, 3, 4 jobs. Who's to blame for that? Usual suspects. But that doesn't make it any better for that little child who's on the screen, in front of the television, on their phone for 10 hours. I went and was on the screen at school for a good 4 or 5 hours. Now I come home and I'm on the screen too. Something I'd say, when 200 questions before you get to the bedroom, that is a massive one. Whole research project. And like I said, you don't have to make it like nerdy, where you have to go to a university library. We're going to go get 15 dissertations. Hey, you could go get some books and check out some of these studies, listen to a report like that. You also go talk to some of the parents, and go talk to parents who have children at different stages. So you can talk to parents who have young children that are under 5, parents who have children that are between like 5 and 12, parents who have teenagers. Okay, tell me about your parenting experience and the screens. Did you just let your child watch screens willy-nilly? What's the result? Would you do anything different? Talk to parents who have multiple children. Did you just let your first child do anything, whatever, with the screen? What was your policy with the screens with your first child? Did you make changes with your later children? If they have multiple children, see what they say. That right there might be fascinating. I don't even have offspring, and I would kind of be interested to just see parents who have observed what's been the result, with my child, watching them. Do I let my child get social media accounts and all that stuff? Do I let them go hang out? Do you go and check, You get your passwords and go and see, are they talking to people online and what websites they're going to and all that? Do you do all of that, or you just, whatever? See what age did you give your child a cell phone? See what they say. And then go talk. You can go talk to your friends if you're female. You go talk to your friends if you're a male. And you all come back and, man, you can exchange. That could be an amazing discussion before you get to the bedroom, so you can kind of be thinking, what's our policy? What are we thinking about all of this? Man. For sure. And then remember what Dr. Welsing said. Addiction, for sure. The section about the vulnerability of children in Venezuela, again, I said, hey, you can ignore all the programming work when I say let's evaluate. Has Gus T. Renegade been constructive with his use of time and energy in 2026? I said you could ignore the programs, but I mean, hey, we have been broadcasting the full time uninterrupted. We did have a guest on the program, native of Venezuela, who had to flee because of her work on the system of white supremacy racism. But she told you got a lot of non-white people in Venezuela. When they say 680,000 children at risk in Venezuela as a result of these earthquakes, that is probably like 90% non-white children. Probably some of them black. They took the words out of my mouth, metaphor. I'd already written it down, and then they said, I said, oh man, this sounds just like the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. They said, oh yeah, remember with the Haitians in 2010? I said, oh yes, I do remember. You had white people, and some of them with the audacity to say, we're religious. We represent white Jesus. Talk to him personally. He told us to come down here amongst the ruins in the honor of Tucson. And we're going to get some of you little Haitian children. Just come along now, little children. Come with us. And say, hey, y'all kidnapping children. What's going on? We talked about that in detail because it was, hey, if you really are in the spirit of white Jesus the Christ, why isn't it, hey, we not coming down here to steal little Tucson Jr.? We are coming down here to help the whole family so that little Tucson Jr. and his family can recover, rebuild, and keep their black hind parts down here in Haiti. Can I get amen, amen, amen? Because we don't want no TPS up here. You ain't going to steal my dog. That's if you genuinely care. We going to hook it up so that they can rebuild and get things rolling, and we not coming to steal them. In fact, what kind of low-life racist scoundrel are you? You see an earthquake and all this destruction and death. Hey, I bet we can steal some black boys and girls. And then the same thing, we made no progress. 16 years later, the first thing, oh my God, 680,000 children at risk. I bet we can steal some children. They won't even be as dark as the Haitians. Even better. What did he say? What that fool say? He said, white people do not care about children. Haitian, Venezuelan, Trayvon. What type of low-life scoundrel? Usual suspects. Now, usual suspects. The usual suspects. Did you hear that report in El Tala, Mississippi? Shout to the Goon Squad. Did you hear that report in El Tala, Mississippi? The privileged black boys got strip searched at school. I said, can I go what I said at the beginning? I said, we'll be here on Monday. John Burge. I said, it is a disgrace. Michelle Alexander, you lying high yellow wench, 2-time sucker. You wrote a whole lame book about racism. specifically a chunk of that book about racism in Chicago, and you can't say a mumbling word about John Burge that rhymes. I said, we're going to correct that for Monday. I said, why we got to talk about John Burge, the masters of genital mutilation, the privileged black boys at Altala, Mississippi. They snatched them out of the bathroom, said, get in the hallway. They didn't even say, hey, if we got to do all this searching, maybe stay in the laboratory, since we're going to have to pull your britches down and do all this searching in your nether regions. Maybe we keep you in the laboratory. No. What's done in the dark will come to the light. You get out here in the hallway. Are people walking by and what? Because they said, hey, we didn't really want to talk about all this. Duh. Did they pull them out in the hallway for everyone to be, look at, put that on Instagram. Oh my God, he's naked. I see your underwear. I see your behind. What? They say Officer Roy Wine, that's his name, Roywine. They said, and I don't know if this is a black person or a white person. I have no idea. It's in Mississippi. Could have been a black person. I have no idea. But this is like the resource officer, the cop who sits in the schools, Officer Slam. Could have been a black person. I don't know. I've been trying to find a picture. Hey, homework. If anybody, you got free time, you didn't get loose with the mad dog for the 4th, is Officer Roy Wine in Tala, Tala, T-A-L-A. Is Roy Wine, is this a white person or a non-white person down in Mississippi? Resource officer. I was not able. Oh, sorry. Leroy. How did I mess that up? Leroy Wine. How did I mess that up? Leroy Wine. Leroy Wine. Is this a white person or a non-white person? I don't know. But anyway, and that's another one to think about at the schools. So do we want to send our child to school where, under the guise of them being so concerned about vaping in the bathrooms, they have to snatch all the black dudes out, make them get naked, and squat in the hallway so we can check your nether regions? We're going to research homeschooling, and then we'll talk about that next week before we get to the bedroom. Did you hear that black attempted parent? And then again, if you want to know why Fuller say you need another illustration, why is it attempted parent? If race soldiers or non-white people who are assigned by race soldiers can grab your black son, snatch him out of the restroom, don't zip your pants or anything, ain't even know you, oh no, go on and pull them back down. Respectfully, I submit, and it would be the same for Gus T if I had children. You are not a parent. You are not intended. All you can do is go up there and talk nicely to the people and hope security officer don't drag you out of the school and ban you from the premises. Ain't that right? They said they filed a lawsuit. Okay, we'll see how that works out. But I mean, hey, you still kind of going and asking white people to adjudicate all this and say they did something wrong. Maybe they'll say so, maybe not. That's the system of white supremacy racism. And that's another reason sobriety would be best. Jesus Christ. That's going to be, that almost sounds like Michelle Alexander, a war on drugs. Like, man, we got to occupy the school because we are so concerned about vaping. We got to pull a Abner Louima on your son. People don't remember that's the black male that they arrested. They took him to the police station and put the plunger in his rectum, ran around the police station and bragged about it. Black male privilege, I guess I can say that again. Black male privilege. I cannot say enough as someone who does not have children. That is why you have to talk to your children about racism. It is mandatory. You are in dereliction of your duty as an attempted parent. If you have offspring, these cats were in high school, so I'm assuming they were over 14. There should have been many, many, many conversations about the system of white supremacy by the time you get to this age. Many. It cannot be, this is the first time, now we're going to sit down and talk about racism. And the reason is, unless I misheard it, one of those black attempted parents said they didn't want to talk to us about this. And I can't, but who wants to come home and, woo, mama, you're not going to believe what a great day I had at school today. Now, before I get to what all we did in English, and we done read The Hate You Give and my project on that, let me tell you about, I got a break to the bathroom. I thought I was going to zip my pants up, wash my hands, and be on my way. Oh, no. Let me tell you, not exactly. And particularly, I'm supposed to be a privileged black male. I'm supposed to be a privileged black male. That's what they said. I'm supposed to be, you don't snatch me in front of my friends and make me squat in the hallway and run your hand. What? And now, are these folks all sober? Did you all make some sort of false allegation against them that they were snorting crack, wacky tobacco, reefer, fentanyl, whatever, in the bathroom? Were they literally, did they just go use the restroom, wash our hands, we swap a few dozens, and now we going back to class? No. Your gang, what y'all got going on here? What's going on? Remember, this happened in Mississippi, not far from the Goon Squad. That's another. See, these are my children. And what I said before, if I had parents, if I had children, of course I have parents. If I had children, man, we in Mississippi, boy, my children would have hated me. Oh, God, Dad didn't made us write this whole big report about the Goon Squad. I know about the Goon Squad. He put the dildo in his mouth and the chocolate sauce. He shot him in the mouth. I know. I got delectable Negro. I know. Jesus Christ. Stop talking about all that. Then we get to a situation like that. Oh. I see why Dad talked about the Goon Squad all the time. We got the Goon Squad in Altala at the school. Thank God they didn't have chocolate sauce for us. Maybe they did. He said, even in fact, what's the number one book? The number one book, it's not Michelle Alexander's New Jim Crow. That's almost the worst book. Number one in terms of constructive. We should read this book for an accurate understanding of white supremacy, racism. For years, delectable Negro, human consumption, and homoeroticism in U.S. slave culture. Incident like what happened in Altala. That's why. Number one, all of it. It's even in that book. Vincent Woodard say, hey, you're a victim of white supremacy. You don't get to decide if you wear clothes or not. That's not your decision. Racist man, racist woman, racist child say. I say, you don't get to wear breeches today. Take them breeches off. That's what it was. Hey, they want to say 1776. That's what it was to be black. 2026, go to Altalia. They will remind you. That's what it means to be black. That's the system of white supremacy, racism. That's attempted parent. Somebody else has the authority to tell your child, hey, you don't get to zip your britches up. I tell you when to pull your britches up. And right now I say, pull your britches down. And squat. That's even like, what? What? Are we in greater confinement? Yes. Oh, okay. My bad. Sorry. Which is why you have to talk to your children. I know they done had white people. It's cliche. We go in the bathroom and puff. That's for years. I know they want the wacky tobacco, but dang, I don't ever recall we done snatched all the white boys, grab them by the ear and yank them out in the hallway. Get over here. You gonna give me that pack of cigarettes right now. You and Joe Camel have had it up to here. Now pull your pants down right now. What? They ain't even do that in Columbine. They had pipe bombs. They ain't do all that. We gonna pull your pants down, Dill, Rev, where the pipe bombs at? They ain't do all that up there. What's the white fella, Ethan Crumley? He was gonna shoot the school up. They ain't do all that up there. Where the guns at, Ethan? Pull your pants down right now. We gonna where the rest of the magazines at? You got any pipe bombs on you? Let's see. I can't stress enough. I do not have children, but I cannot stress enough. Talk to your children about racism. And again, you can use these news reports, man, and you can talk about your own experience with white people. What was it like for you going to school? What's it like for you going to work? What's it like for you getting up every day? As long as you don't talk to them about Michelle Alexander's book, you're doing A+. Let's see. The report, she did say I didn't really know what to say. One of the parents, she said when her child was telling her what happened, and she said she did a U-turn on the highway like Medea. Victims guaranteed qualified. I mean, that's a trauma I can't even imagine, so my brain computer probably would not work at its best if I was getting some sort of just shocking information like that, or shocking report like that from my offspring. I'd probably be so stunned that I wouldn't be able to react correctly either, and I might not have the most eloquent thoughts. But man, I certainly do not want to compare any hard-working attempted black mother or father who's doing the best they can and trying to respond to their child being just traumatized, victimized, sexually abused. I would not compare that to no Tyler Perry film with a black dude pretending to be a black grandmother. Like, nah, man. Like, you went to respond immediately as a black mom with the highest level of black self-respect and concern for her child. That's what you did, not responding like Medea. Gus T is no fan of the Tyler Perry films. The segment right here in Tacoma, the airport is SeaTac, Seattle, Tacoma. Right here in Tacoma. I've been to Tacoma, not today, but I have been to Tacoma bunches and bunches and bunches of times. Renee Wilson, black female, pregnant, well, she's not anymore, but recently pregnant, black female, about to deliver, says she went out on her due date. I'm going out trying to be a responsible parent, put the car seat in the vehicle, doing the right thing as an attempted mom, even sneak a copy of Mr. Fuller's code book in there so we can be talking about racism from day one. And she gets mauled by pit bulls. Now, I don't know who the owners are. The reports that I saw, I did not see images of who the dog owners are. I will say, we just had a listener write in 4 days ago, this week, black male, privileged. This was for workplace racism in the archives for this past Thursday. He said, I just was out on my job trying to make a few nickels. A dog was on the property in the house where I'm working, and they did he's sweet, he wouldn't harm it, and he's trying to get finished up. The dog breaks out of the room, comes and bites him. Now he's got to go through all this legal procedures and go into court and all the rest of it, do all that paperwork, go to the doctor, make sure he doesn't have rabies and everything else. Man, I literally just said, we went over a whole code, have a graphic, I shared it on social media. We talked about all the steps. Anybody who does work where you have to go to someone else's residence where they have a dog, and that's if you deliver or you actually have to go inside the house, steps you want to take to prepare to make sure that you are safe and do not get mauled, like Renee Wilson, who just went out to her vehicle. I just said there are so many irresponsible dog owners. I just said that. I said that like 3 or 4 times. Not even blaming it. I said, I'm vegan. I don't fuss at no dog and all that, but man, there are so many irresponsible dog owners, white and non-white, unfortunately. And they'll have these old, big, aggressive dogs. Sometimes they're vicious and mean, nasty to them, don't feed them correctly, so they're not peaceful critters at all, and or they're just irresponsible. You heard they didn't even have the fencing for these beasts properly, that they knew the fence was broke. They knew it was broke, and that you got these huge dogs, even if it's just for the other dogs' safety in the neighborhood, because I've seen that. I don't have no children. I don't have no pets, and I'm not a pet person. I'm vegan, but I'm not even someone who would want pets like this. I'm not a pet person. But man, you know, you got these pit bulls. These are not the little sweet chihuahuas and little Yorkies, little tiny dogs that you can put in a purse and that white people put in the baby carriage and this. These are aggressive big dogs. I shouldn't say aggressive, but these are dogs that can be aggressive, even have a reputation for being the ones that, oh yeah, you gonna do some fighting and attack dogs and get them pit bulls and all. You got to be responsible with all that. Oh, let me get this fence repaired, and or at least I'm not gonna let them roam unattended in the backyard. And I know the fence. I'm gonna be right there. Get back over here and what's wrong with you? You got to be right there. Nah. She could have been killed easily. Talking about Renee Wilson, black. She could have been killed easily, or her baby, she could have lost it easily. They said thankfully the neighbors came out and helped her, and she said the neighbors didn't want to help. And duh, we're sitting up watching Cujo could be rabid dogs and rip this female apart. They said the dogs are dragging her across the parking lot. We did read White Dog during the summertime, and we had multiple reports about centuries, not a one time, like centuries of white people training their dogs to do this exactly. It's in Training Day. I played the audio clip. You can go back. Matter of fact, man, Dr. Tyler Perry, that is, woo, Providence, how that happened. So you got Tyler Perry, who makes the goofy movies that Gus T hates. And then in 2020, we had Dr. Tyler Perry, that is not spelled the same way, Perry spelled with an A, not an E, who is a white man. We talked about his research, that's the history of white supremacy racism, training our dogs to hate and attack black people. Then in 2023, we had Dr. Madeline Wazelchuk as a guest on the program. Exact same type of research. This extended police departments, private citizens, white people who own slaves, maybe whoever in Tacoma. Now again, I don't know who owns those dogs in Tacoma. White person, non-white person, I don't know. Either way, if it could be a person classified as black with 8 great-grandparents all born in Mississippi, El Tala, Mississippi, for all I care. It is irrelevant to me. I would say there should be some criminal charges. She could have been killed. Now, they said a misdemeanor, so that's criminal charge. Man, it should be way stiffer than just you got a misdemeanor on your record and $2,000 in fines. Now, I know for some people, hey, for me, $2,000, oh my God, that's crippling. I might be a slave for life. For some people, that would be crippling, but no, man. You could have killed that woman, female, black female, and or you could have killed her child. I think that is way more than $2,000. She's got her civil suits, so hopefully she can bang them for, millions, if not billions. But I mean, are you serious? Michael Vick. I don't remember nobody stepping out and saying, man, that old worthless heathen from Virginia, not talking about Gus T, although he qualified too, but talking about Michael Vick, he let his old pit bulls, bad news kennels, he let his old pit bulls and dogs come out and chomp me to death, and I was pregnant and I ain't heard nobody say nothing like that. Nobody say nothing like that. Now, if I missed all that, Jesus Christ, I'll retire. I ain't hear nothing like that was going on in Virginia. Man, you go ask Mike Vick, hey, what you say if they had come to you after everything happened and they found out what you did and all the dogs that you done killed and what you was doing up there, bad news kennels, and they say, hey, Mike Vick, your punishment, we found you guilty, your punishment is going to be, you get a misdemeanor, $2,000 in fines. Come on. We miss you, brother Mike Vick. He's still with us, just hadn't seen him on TV. And it's not football season, so I haven't seen him in it. We miss you, brother Michael Vick. The segment on the MK Ultra, that is one that I'm very glad that I shared. For people who, you maybe not familiar with MK Ultra, why is that important? Why did you play that so late in the segment? After the mauling out in Tacoma, why is that so important, Gus T? Let me learn. In fact, before I even explain why that's important, that would have been so easy to miss in terms of Congress. This was like a 2-hour hearing that they had to talk about. This is a subject, in fact, a lot of people would dismiss and say, like Michelle Alexander, that's conspiracy theory. You're just making up silliness. Get on out of here talking all that foolishness and fake news. Okay. This was congressional testimony that lasted 2 hours. The same Congress member who led this commission, Anna Paulina Luna, she is the member of Congress leading the charge on the JFK investigation. Had Abraham Bolden come and testify and talk about all the racism in the Secret Service. Within all of this, even before I get to within what they said, as soon as I saw this, I said, oh my goodness, we got to play that immediately. Got to share, we got to talk about that. Why? One word, Jonestown. As soon as we started reading Jonestown, I laid out a list. These are things that are relevant for our reading and study of the book, Was Jonestown a CIA Medical Experiment? MK Ultra was on the list. Mind control, and then drugs was a whole separate category. I said all of this was happening at the same time as Jonestown. All these predominantly black people were drugged at Jonestown and even drugged before they got to Guyana. There's evidence that they were drugged right here in California, way before we got screen time. The colleges and universities being involved in all of this to study. And matter of fact, we read Jonestown, and I was going and getting articles talking about, because all of this was released at the same time. Like you can look in papers and they're talking about Jim Jones and the People's Temple, and then they switch over to talking about MK Ultra and all this being released, and the COINTELPRO findings, all in the same context. I told you when we were reading Jonestown that when I was doing my research, they had newspaper articles. This is not, I went out and talked to Joe Hobo on the street. These are newspaper reports where they were investigating some of the findings. What was this program about? One aspect of this program, figure out concoctions that we can administer to subjects, either a pill that we can give them, solution, whatever. We can administer to a person. They will be rendered illiterate. Person might know how to read. Once we give them this concoction, they can't read anymore. We put newspaper in front of them, book, whatever. Put their own name in front of them. What? Wait a minute. What? I would have said what Michelle said. That's crazy. You just making up some old ludicrous stuff. And why are you lying to people? But this was a newspaper report. It was only crazy because I would have never thought of something like, I wouldn't have even thought such a thing is possible. You can throw a solution on somebody or give someone some sort of concoction tablet and now I'm illiterate? What? And then I said, oh, wait a minute. I looked at us. Oh. Did they figure that concoction out and then dump a barrel of it on black people? Even the fact that you would have white people who they were interested in a concoction like that, in a system of white supremacy racism where someone doesn't want black people to read. I said, wow, we should study a lot more about MK Ultra. And I kept mentioning it over and over. Jones, mind control, how do you alter behavior of people, and how do you kidnap all these folks and get them down to South America? Matter of fact, they didn't even touch on everything. I told you it was 2 hours of congressional testimony. People talked about what did we find, and these. If anything, I did say Gus T got those FBI records on Dr. Welsing. They've been snooping on her since 19. That 2 hours of testimony, it was a lot of people classified as white. Tom O'Neill talking about what information, what records I got from making FOIA requests of the federal government. That's why Gus T said, hey, we should be curious. It's got to be something. Maybe you're not curious about MK Ultra, but it's got to be something that you are curious about if we're going to replace white supremacy with justice. One of the main ways that white people lie, they omit constructive information. Lie all the time. The more reading of nonfiction we do, the more curiosity that we have and pursue. That right there, I would even dare to say, having people who are curious, that tends to work against deception. People who are arch deceivers, they like leaving you confused, leave you in the lurch, question marks. Ooh, I don't know. What's going to happen? People who are curious, oh no, I'm going to find out. I'm going to ask questions and seek truthful answers. Reveal truth. I'm going to seek out what this is. See if we can maybe get a solution to this problem. Being curious. They extinguish, that's a part of their conditioning program where we just don't become curious about much of anything. Certainly not curious about things that are constructive. Be curious. Then we'll file more FOIA requests and we'll learn a lot more about what does it mean to be white? What is system of white supremacy racism? But Tom O'Neill, he was one of the folks that gave congressional testimony. What did he say? He said, and again, Jonestown, he said a lot, but one of the things that he said, oh my Lord, he said that I'd heard before, but he came this time, he said, the documents say from the FOIA requests, Charles Manson, this dude is one of these old government informants, provocateurs. Oh my Lord. Old Mae Brussel had said that like decades ago. She had interviewed police officers who said, man, this dude is out here engaged in criminal activity. We're trying to arrest him. And they say, leave old Charlie alone. What the hell? Why leave old Charlie alone? He's a criminal? Why? And this is same geographic location, same context, same time period as Jim Jones. What did Charlie Manson do? He told them folks to go do all that killing. So we're going to start a so-called race war and then do all that killing and put off the pigs on the wall so they will blame it on black people, which they did. Important context for Charles Manson, because those killings originally, they didn't say this is some old white dude who looks like white Jesus who did this. No, they said Vietnam veteran Geronimo Pratt, you did this. client of Johnny Cochran, Geronimo Pratt, said, "You did this." And then after we can't, you sure we can't? Oh, I guess we can't stick it on Pratt. Fine, we'll stick the other one on Pratt. Guess we'll go ahead and get Charlie. Mae Brussel had been saying this for decades, but she didn't have no FBI documents and such saying, "Oh, Lord, this dude is yours." Now, again, I'm just saying the history is race war. This was to get black people killed, maybe to get some innocent Black Panthers, attempted counter-racists, killed, or at minimum, get them falsely convicted for this crime. Was that a part of the government plan too? Symbionese Liberation Army and all that. In fact, Donald Freeze, SynQ, all of that. We talked about all that with Jim Jones, Jonestown, and say, was Jim Jones involved with the Symbionese Liberation Army? Because that was right there in the Bay Area of San Francisco, same regions that Jim Jones was operating in. Was he involved in all of this? And the prison, in fact, everything they said, man, CIA was using hospitals so we can go get vulnerable individuals to do these experiments on. That is exactly what Jim Jones did. He would go and get his white People's Committee planners. They would go and embed at the mental facilities in California, go get access so we can go get people, even go get juveniles, have them turned over as wards of the state to the People's Temple. That's how they were getting the SSI checks and all the rest of it, absconded with these folks to South America. Drug addicts and all the rest of it. Easy, you get vulnerable people. You were already a drug addict. Oh, we got some more of that right here. That was exactly Jim Jones. And some of this, like I said, about MK Ultra and them using universities and such, I believe UCLA and Stanford were in there. Some of this had already been released. This is just broadening the scope of what all this was about. And again, all of this is about the system of white supremacy racism. But why do I think a lot of people didn't hear about all of this, since I think it's so relevant? Do you see how slick all this was? The hearing for this, and when it gets released, days before the July 4th holiday, and in the middle of the FIFA World Cup, which is happening here in the U.S. You got all these people distracted by that, and then people who are already checking out because we got a holiday weekend. That's where they have this hearing where you probably got tons of people missed all of that, which may have been one of the more important pieces of news from this past week. Might be one. Even Tom O'Neill has a book on Charles Manson and the CIA. I bet you COINTELPRO pops up in there. I bet you Jim Jones pops up in there. I bet you the Symbionese Liberation Army pops up in there. I kept bumping into Charlie Manson and this book. When I went to California to do my 30 days of research on Jonestown, all that they have books, all of this is discussed together as a government plot. Charles Manson, Jonestown. It happened in the same location. And Mae Brussel has whole programs where she discusses all of this. Government program, and particularly government program targeting black people. You can even add the Symbionese Liberation Army in there. Folks in California, I would for sure, and because people in California, it's some of your state universities are some of the places that were part of the research for the MK Ultra experiments. You should be interested in all of this. Maybe do some research. Go to UCLA, research MK Ultra. I fear, similar to COINTELPRO, this is mostly a white academic subject matter in terms of you probably won't find large numbers of people classified as black who seriously study MK Ultra, like they go and get reports and have like seriously read material. to understand what this program was about and how it applies to racism, white supremacy. I don't get the impression that that's the case. But for Jonestown, that's how we should think about this, and we should invest some time studying all of this. Like I said, a reason why this got released at this time, I think. They didn't release this like they could have waited. If this had been the first week of August, a little different. We don't have all the fireworks and, oh my gosh, the USA, they're going to get to the final round and all that. All that's done in August. Any hoodles, Jonestown. Was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment? One of the most important, way better than New Jim Crow. One of the most important books that we read. And in fact, I can even connect. I said MK Ultra in the not reading. Jim Jones, when we read that book, one of the things that I highlighted there, even before they got to Guyana, when they were still in Ukiah, Mendocino County, California, Jim Jones didn't let them read. And that was a hallmark of their whole program with the People's Temple. And I'm sure some of it, you get vulnerable people who don't have the best literature skills, but he wouldn't let them read. It's in the book that we read specifically. They would steal books from people once they brought them into the People's Temple. Like, oh no, you're not going to be sitting around here strengthening your brain computer. We'll tell you what to think. And then once they got them down to Guyana and such, where they're separated from everybody, separated from the continent even, hey, ain't going to be no reading the newspaper. We tell you, well, so maybe some of us maybe have access to the newspaper, not you. We'll tell you what we read in the newspaper. You don't go to the library. You don't go get no literature. You don't feed your brain computer. We put what's in your brain. I remember that specific. I was reading that. I remember reading that at the same time, reading about MK Ultra. And we are fixing concoctions to toss on you or so that you can ingest, and now you're going to be illiterate. And I don't even remember, was this like a temporary thing? Was this permanent? And again, my brain doesn't even I would never have even in my wildest. What can we mix together so that these white people will be illiterate? I'd even be scared, like I mess around and inhale it and make myself stupid. The scientific and vile mind of racist man, racist woman, racist child, it knows no bounds. That's Monday. Matter of fact, that's Monday. Everything I just said, MK Ultra and all that. We're going to do the experiments on these folks and see if we can make them be illiterate and all the rest of it. All of that. Slip some LSD on them. See if I can get his name. I mentioned it before because it's all in the same context I've said for the longest, and particularly for Memorial Day, I've said you should go and watch James R. Thornwell. That's it. James R. Thornwell, Thornwell. James R. Thornwell, privileged black male. He's deceased now, but he was in the Army. During the 1960s, they did this. Part of what they're talking about with MK Ultra, they gave him LSD unbeknownst to him in the midst of accusing him of stealing these files and committing espionage and all this other totally innocent. But they slipped this substance to him and are driving him crazy and all the rest. They ended up, this went to Congress as well. They have documentaries about this. They have like Hollywood biopic movies about what happened to him. He got like a reparations settlement and an apology from Congress for them doing this to him, experimenting on him, if you will, but vulnerable in the military. We can do whatever we want to you. James R. Thornwell. That's why so many components to MK Ultra. This is a part. In fact, you can read sometimes MK Ultra, and this will pop up in it as a part of that, them slipping LSD and all these different concoctions and chemicals to people, and they sit back and observe. Let's see what happened to James. Let's go ask him some questions, see what happens. See if we can slip in one and erase his memory. All this old craziness. It's so crazy. You would think, when you hear it, you would think that is crazy as hell. You are just making up something. Like, no. Read. You'd have to go get the document to be like, what? And the impulse would be, white people are crazy. No. They are diabolical and dedicated to the system of white supremacy racism. Fuller say, we go to the bottom of the ocean, get a piece of grain of sand to study. How can I use this to dominate you? That's everything in the known universe. That is for sure MK Ultra. But check out that congressional, like I said, if you read Abraham Bolden's biography, The Assassination of John Kennedy, we were talking, we had James D. Eugenio here earlier this year talking about the assassination of John F. Kennedy, how that relates to the assassination of Dr. King, Malcolm X, all that being related. I said you should go and watch both of the congressional testimonies segments that they've had so far for JFK. The first one where it was Oliver Stone, James D. Eugenio was there. The second one, they had Abraham Bolden. Go watch the one from this week. That's not on JFK. That's on MK Ultra. Go watch the one from this week and keep in mind what we studied about JFK, and then keep in mind Jonestown and system of white supremacy racism. JFK, Jonestown, and watch what they said this week about MK Ultra. Then maybe even might be motivated, if you need a nonfiction book, get that Tom O'Neill book. Charlie Manson, C.O.W.S. That's the CIA program, Operation Chaos. That's a synonym with confusion, right? Might be talking crazy. We'll get to it. Check that out. I'll post it online. I'll post the links for Jonestown as well. One of the most, but some said the most important book that we have read in the Catherine Massey Book Club, Michael Mayer's, was Jonestown, a CIA medical experiment. I emphasized, I think, the whole time we read that book, that it was not called the People's Temple, or excuse me, it was not called Jonestown. It was called the People's Temple, the People's Temple's Agricultural and Medical Project. That's what Jonestown's official name is. With that, Monday, the masters of genital mutilation, hey, El Talia, they tell the generation, hey, we carrying on the torch for John Burge and the Goon Squad. For Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I cannot wait. And I cannot wait because now, since we studied and read Michelle Alexander's new Jim Crow, that's going to be one like OJ that I look forward to when we have white guests on the program. What do you think about Michelle Alexander's new Jim Crow? Do you think a white woman who has sex with a black dude is a victim of racism, like Michelle's mama? Should she have included John Burge in new Jim Crow's chapter on racism in Chicago? Looking forward to Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Chicago. Maybe we've been getting word about the new Obama Center, maybe, although it's not really relevant to John Burge. Actually, I'm going to have to... Obama would have been in Chicago during the John Burge saga. So, yeah, I'm going to go back and I don't think he mentions John Burge either. But, yeah, I think Obeezy would have been there. I don't know if we'll get to the Obama Center or not, but we'll have to see. Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hopefully the C.O.W.S has been worthy of your time and energy. Sobriety would be best. One drink is a risk. We don't need no more D'Angelo's, Chadwick Boseman's leaving us early. And, hey, it's already the 100 deadliest days on the road. Let's do all that we can to stay safe. In my view, a big part of that includes let's stay sober and let's make sure we are not out late. Like once it gets dark, park it, stay in one spot. We can get started and have our fun again, at least moving around and such. The next day, sun comes up. We don't have to deal with all those sobriety checkpoints and other intoxicated motorists. Many dangers in the system of white supremacy. Much obliged for folks tuning in. We will be back in 48 hours. Creator, we ask that you remind us, stop saying not all white people are racist. Remind us, stop name calling and cursing black people. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Let's make sure we do all we can to keep our fingers, toes, residents from being burned to the ground for July 4. Cal signing up. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. No problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.